Blissful Bookshelf. I shall reward you handsomely, in view of your loyalty, when we return. Giving the leader a compliment, GMO Gongzi changed into a black suit and followed behind the other party to an isolated corner of the residence before secretly flipping over the wall. They proceeded carefully and they successfully managed to avoid alarming anyone. Soon, they arrived at the forest beyond the city. Young master, this is the place, the leader pointed forward with a finger. All right. Upon hearing that the person who embarrassed him was inside, GMO Gongzi proceeded in, his body shaking with excitement. Where is the person? Walking into the forest, GMO scanned the surroundings, but it was completely empty. He was feeling perplexed when the sight before him turned dark all of a sudden. A gunny sack had been pulled over his head. What are you doing? Feeling shocked, GMO was about to struggle, but he felt a sudden and excruciating pain on his face. Fists, sticks, and stones came raining down on him. Pai li pa la. The sounds of fists and legs sinking into his flesh filled the air, and before GMO Gongzi could react, he was already knocked onto the ground. Innumerable bones throughout his entire body had been fractured. Woo! GMO Gongzi wailed through lips that had swollen to look like sausages. Until now, he had yet to comprehend the situation. Isn't the purpose of the trip here to watch Zhang Xian getting humiliated? Why am I getting beaten up now? It seemed as though an eternity had passed before the torrential blows on his body came to a stop. The gunny sack was torn apart, and his clothes were taken off his body. Then, he felt an ache on his hands. When he finally recovered, he was already hanging on a tree. A chilly night breeze blew across his bare body. What are all of you up to? At this moment, GMO finally saw the faces of the group who bashed him up. They were the 5 subordinates whom he sent after Zhang Xian. Gongzi, we don't have a choice either. Why did you have to offend someone you shouldn't have offended? You even had to implicate us. As the leader spoke, he infused Jinqi into a record crystal, recording the sight before him. You poo. Realizing that his naked body was getting recorded, GMO Gongzi felt embarrassed and infuriated, and he spurted a mouthful of blood. What the heck is this? Aren't these people my subordinates? When did they betray and become the other party's lackeys? It wasn't easy for me to devise this plan, a plan where the other party has no choice but to suffer in silence. Yet to think that it would be executed on me instead. It was laughable that he had felt impressed with his subordinates' loyalty. They were indeed loyal, just not to him. All along, I thought that he would be big and strong since he was able to attract the attention of so many beauties. To think that it would be that small. You're right, it's really small. It's my first time seeing one of that size. Me too. It is such an eye-opener. Just as his frustration was bubbling within, he heard the discussion that went on in the group below him. The hell? You're the one who has a small one, your entire family has small ones. Poo. Greatly infuriated, GMO Gongzi couldn't hold himself back, and he sprayed another mouthful of fresh blood. Then, he fainted. It was a silent night. When Zhang Xian finally woke up from his sleep, his fatigue from the journey had disappeared completely. As he stepped out from his room, he saw Lu Ling and the others standing right outside his doors, looking at him as if he were a monster. You simply gave them a few pointers and they achieved breakthroughs? Pointing to Zheng Yang, Zhao Ye, and the others, Lu Shi asked in disbelief. When he woke up early in the morning and saw the leap in the group's cultivation, he was so shocked that his teeth nearly fell onto the floor. Blissful Bookshelf. For all of them to achieve breakthroughs with just a brief of guidance, isn't it way too easy to achieve breakthroughs? All along, Lu Shi thought that even though his senior had a unique and impressive way in guiding his students, his senior was inferior to him, especially since that he wasn't yet a master teacher. Only after witnessing this situation did he understand that there was indeed a gap between the two of them, but it was the other party who was way ahead of him. Ah, that's right. Zhang Xian nodded. It isn't anything much. Let's go to the master teacher pavilion. Upon hearing these words, the group staggered on their feet. Breakthroughs in their cultivation aren't any big deal. Seeing how casually he put it, Lu Shi and the others felt as though they had taken 1,000 arrows to their heart. In order to help students achieve a breakthrough, they had to go through all kinds of trouble and dig up every last inch of their knowledge, but even so, it wasn't certain that the other party would succeed. Yet, Zhang Xian made it seem as easy as eating and sleeping. Indeed, humans aren't born equal. After checking out from the inn, they rented 2 carriages and headed straight for the master-teacher pavilion. 2 hours later, a grand building stood before them. On top of the entrance were 3 grand words which represented the ultimate authority. Master-Teacher Pavilion. Even though the Master-Teacher Pavilion is considered as a function of the Teacher Guild, it wields much greater influence and power. Those who are able to join its ranks would gain incredible standing in society. Flashing his emblem, Lu Shi led the group in. The hall was vast and grand. Zhang Xian. You're here. Melded within the crowd, Zhang Xian was about to inquire about the examination venue when he heard a voice, then with a turn of his head, he saw a young lady who was accompanying an elder. It's you. The person was the master-teacher apprentice whom Zhang Xian met right after entering Tianwu City. Ling Xiaoxiao. Yeah. You're here to attend Princess Mou's question symposium as well, right? It's about to start and almost every master-teacher in the city is there. Let's go. Even though she wasn't very fond of this ignorant fellow, he was nevertheless an acquaintance. Thus, Ling Xiaoxiao invited him with a smile on her face. Are they all there? Alright, let's go then. Hearing that every master-teacher was there, Zhang Xian knew that his master-teacher examination would have to wait until after the question symposium. Hence, he decided that he might as well take a look to get an idea of the symposium so that he will be able to make better preparations for his own turn. Upon hearing that someone was facing the question symposium, Lu Shi and the others became interested as well. Thus, all of them followed Ling Xiaoxiao into a room. It was similar to those theory classrooms. Tables and chairs of various designs filled the room, and a crowd, numbering above 100, was gathered in here. An entire row of powerful-looking elders and middle-aged men were seated at the very front. To think that this fellow would be here as well. Scanning the surroundings, Zhang Xian suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure. He was squadron leader Yao of the patrol squad from yesterday night. This fellow stood by the corner and was acting as a guard. If not for his reddened and swollen face, Zhang Xian would have suspected if he were his twin brother. After scanning the entire room briefly, Zhang Xian didn't see Mou. Thus, he followed the group and casually took a seat. Just as Zhang Xian noticed squadron leader Yao, the latter saw him as well. In usual circumstances, the Kingdom Patrol Squad would never be responsible for the safety of the Master-Teacher Pavilion, but because the person taking the examination this time was Princess Mou, he was transferred here for temporary duties. Initially, he intended to look for a replacement due to his injuries, but upon recalling that it was the princess's examination, he thought that the fellow would definitely appear if he was truly related to her. If he didn't show up, or if the princess didn't recognize him, that would mean that physician Bai Chan was lying. Considering how badly he was beaten up, no one could blame him for desiring to take revenge. Thus, with such motives in mind, he endured his injuries and stood guard at a corner. To think that the fellow would really turn up. I would really like to witness if you are indeed close to the princess. With a cold harumph, squadron leader Yao stood upright and observed the situation quietly. Zhang Xian and the others took a seat. There's a total of 13 one-star master teachers and 3 two-star master teachers in Tianwu Kingdom. The question symposium is the last formal procedure for a master teacher examinee, and none of the two-star master teachers is here. Knowing that the person before her knew nothing at all, Ling Xiaoxiao explained kindly. Zhang Xian was astounded. Tianxian Kingdom didn't even have a one-star master teacher, yet Tianwu Kingdom had 13 one-stars and 3 two-stars. Just by the number of master teachers, one could tell the difference in the national might. As expected of the strongest kingdom within the cluster of 13 countries. With so many master teachers conducting lessons here, how is it possible that the next generation not be incredible? How would the nation not be so mighty? Who are the 2-star master teachers in the kingdom? Recovering from his shock, Zhang Xian could not help but ask. Hearing the other party ask such a fundamental question, Ling Xiaoxiao rolled her eyes once more. The most formidable 2-star master teacher in the empire is naturally Pavilion Master Zhang. According to the rumors, he has reached 2-star pinnacle, and it is just a matter of time before he reaches 3-star. As for the other two, they are Wang Shi and Mu Shi. Mu Shi reached 2-star less than 2 years ago, and he is the newest of the three. Oh. Zhang Xian nodded. Glancing around, he asked, is the genius you spoke of, Mo Hongyi, present? Of course he's here. Furthermore, he has the highest position of all the master teachers here. Look, he's the one seated right at the center. Ling Xiaoxiao pointed. Right at the center. Zhang Xian raised his head to take a look. At the center of the very front row of master teachers sat a young man who seemed to be about 25. He exuded an aura which felt as vast and deep as an ocean, and it exerted an immense pressure on those around him. Zhongshe Realm Pinnacle. Not only was he strong, his pitch-black eyes seemed to wield some kind of unique power as well. He appeared to be confident and astute, seeming as if there was nothing in the world which could trouble him. Incredible. With just a single glance, Zhang Xian could tell that the other geniuses he had met were nothing compared to him. They were in different leagues. Even Princess Mou paled far in comparison to him. I'm afraid that his soul depth is 6.0 at the very least. Lu Shi's attention was also on Mo Hongyi, and he sent a telepathic message over. 6.0. Zhang Xian was thrown. With a soul depth of 3.0, one becomes eligible for the 1-star master teacher examination. 6.0, one can take the 2-star examination. To possess such incredible soul depth at just 26-year-old and, not to mention, his formidable cultivation, he sure lives up to his name as the genius. Princess Mou is here. Just as he was busy examining Mo Hongyi, Ling Xiaoxiao's voice echoed once more. Turning to the entrance, he saw a young lady making her way in. Who else could the person be if not Mou? Dressed in a bright red robe, her hair and face had been immaculately done up, making her appear much more charming and beautiful than before. At this moment, she was in no way inferior to Xiaoya. As expected of the number 1 beauty in Tianwu Kingdom. It was mere moments since her entrance and she had already managed to attract everyone's attention. Once inside, Princess Mou began to scan her surroundings, then her eyes fell on a certain spot and lighted up unwittingly. As the center of attention, her expression piqued everyone's curiosity immediately. They followed the direction of her gaze and swiftly turned their heads over. They thought that they would find a formidable figure, but it turned out to be just an ordinary young man. Seeing her look toward him, Zhang Xian became speechless. You know that you're the star of the show, yet you just have to look at me like that, bringing me unwanted attention. You are doing this intentionally, aren't you feeling despondent? Zhang Xian was thinking about what to say when he heard an agitated and excited voice sound out beside him. Princess Mou looked at me. She actually noticed me. Ling Xiaoxiao was so excited that her face turned red. If not for the situation, she would have shrilled in joy. Ah! Zhang Xian shook his head, looking at that zealous lady before him. However, coincidentally, her actions actually helped Zhang Xian to avert that awkward predicament. The question symposium begins. Upon the arrival of the examinee, Mo Hongyi declared, and the final test of the master teacher, the question symposium, began. The question symposium was similar to the pill debate of the apothecaries. Every 1-star master teacher in attendance would pose a question regarding cultivation, and the scope would usually be limited to below Zhongshe realm. One's Xinqi is congested at the last acupoint, resulting in the person being unable to reach Tongxian realm. How can this problem be solved? A master teacher asked. There are 2 solutions. The first solution is to gather a large amount of Zhenqi around the acupoint to stimulate the blocked Zhenqi. As for the second method, one can utilize medicine. A grade 1 acupoint soothing pill can resolve this situation, but it is ineffective for those who have suffered from this problem for an extended period of time. If so, one should consume a grade 2 acupoint breakthrough pill instead. Princess Mou answered the question calmly. Clearly, a question of this level wasn't sufficient to stump her. After listening for a few moments, a blank expression appeared on Zhang Xian's face. Although he could impersonate master teachers and had, in fact, helped many people achieve breakthroughs, he had basically been relying on his Heaven's Path Zhenqi. The methods that Princess Mou mentioned were completely foreign to him. There wasn't a question that he could answer. Looks like I have to browse through some books first before taking the 1-star master teacher examination. Otherwise, I will surely fail this question symposium. Zhang Xian shook his head. After all, when they ask him about how to achieve a breakthrough in different circumstances, he couldn't simply reply them all with a needle and a surge of Zhenqi. If he were to really reply like that, he would surely be evicted right away. After listening for another duration, he ascertained that he truly didn't understand a single word that the other party spoke. Thus, he could not help but look at the lady beside him and ask, "How many tests are there in the master teacher examination?" Even though his purpose here was to attempt the master teacher examination, he had no idea how the examination was conducted. "Do you not even know that?" Ling Xiaoxiao was on the verge of going insane. She was even suspecting whether the other party had bought his apprentice emblem using money. These are all fundamental knowledge. If you don't even know these, how the hell are you going to take the master teacher examination? Zhang Xian nodded his head. All right. Feeling utterly defeated by the other party, Ling Xiaoxiao could only explain helplessly. There are a total of 5 tests for the master teacher examination. 5 tests. That's right. The first test is the House of Trust. What it assesses is the trust level that the examinee's student has for him, and the passing criterion is a trust level that exceeds 50. If one doesn't have any students or if none of his students had a sufficient trust level, it would be deemed as a failure. The second test is the Supporting Occupation Pavilion. In order to become a 1-star master teacher, one must possess a supporting occupation and reach the level of an official member. The third test is Puppet Hall. During the test, 2 puppets fighting each other will appear. These puppets are forged using a unique method, and the moves and battle techniques they utilize will be completely different. However, they are similarly powerful, and neither of them is able to defeat the other. The examinee has to provide guidance on the spot such that one of them achieves victory over the other. The fourth test is the Cultivation Technique Ocean. There are countless cultivation and battle technique manuals in the ocean, and one will have to pick out a random book and conduct a relevant lecture immediately. During the lecture, you will be judged by several master teachers, as well as the Whilom Sage Bell. Whilom Sage Bell. The Sage's Bell is a spirit treasure in the Cultivation Technique treasure. Imprinted inside the Whilom Sage Bell is the comprehension that former sages had over the techniques. If the content of one's lecture doesn't satisfy the Whilom Sage Bell, the bell will not chime and he obtains a fail. Zhang Xian was taken aback. He didn't expect such an incredible object to exist in this world. After the first 4 tests, one will have to undergo the Unerring Pavilion. In the Unerring Pavilion, a puppet will display a cultivation technique, battle technique, or even a skill from the supporting occupation you chose. The movements that it displays will contain errors within them, but they will all be well disguised, making it nigh impossible to discover them. The examinee has to identify one error within an incense stick's burn time in order to pass, otherwise, it is considered a failure. Ling Xiaoxiao seemed to be extremely familiar with the various tests of the master teacher examination, and she explained each of them in detail. House of Trust, Supporting Occupation Pavilion, Puppet Hall, Cultivation Technique C, and Unerring Pavilion 5 tests, with each of them is harder than the previous. Wait, what about the question symposium? Zhang Xian had a perplexed expression. Isn't the question symposium the final test in the master-teacher examination? Why didn't Ling Xiaoxiao mention it? Even though the question symposium is the final test out of the entire master-teacher examination, it is also the easiest one. As long as an examinee is able to pass the first 5, this last test is negligible. So far, its passing rate is 100%. Thus, as long as one passes the first 5 tests, he would be considered to have passed the master-teacher examination and be qualified to call himself a master-teacher. The question symposium is more of a formal event to introduce the new master-teacher to the others. Ling Xiaoxiao explained. Zhang Xian nodded, but at the same time, a wave of dejection took over him. So it appears that this symposium is the simplest stage of the entire examination. To think I would be unable to understand anything that they said on stage. From the looks of it, the master-teacher examination isn't that easy after all. As the two of them continued to converse, the question symposium above neared its end. Congratulations, master-teacher Mou. Here is your emblem. From now on, you're a 1-star master teacher. The master teachers in the front row of seats offered their congratulations. After receiving the master teacher emblem and the robe specially tailored for master teachers, Princess Mou felt thrilled. There seemed to be just a sliver of difference between an apprentice and a true master teacher, but the status they possessed were worlds apart. Only after successfully becoming a master teacher can one truly be considered to be at the pinnacle of society. I have something on, so I'll first take my leave. After presenting the emblem and robe to Mou, Hongyi nodded and then turned around to leave immediately. Seeming to be well aware of the other party's temperament, Mou didn't look angered. After trading a few obligatory pleasantries with the crowd, Mou was finally able to extricate herself and she headed in Zhang Xian's direction. Upon seeing Mou walking over, Ling Xiaoxiao's face flushed in agitation, and words could do little to describe her excitement. My idol is coming. Does she really recognize me? Hurry, help me take a look. Is my hair messy? It's not messy. Zhang Xian shook his head. That's good. Ling Xiaoxiao stood up hastily. Apprentice Ling Xiaoxiao pays respect to Mou. Sure. Nodding her head slightly, Princess Mou then ignored her, turning to face Zhang Xian instead. Seeing how the princess who had just passed her 1-star master-teacher examination had her gaze fixated on an unfamiliar youngster, the environment fell into silence immediately. Ling Xiaoxiao was dumbfounded by the sight, and she nearly keeled over. She thought that her idol had come for her. Never in her dreams did she expect for Princess Mou to simply respond with a slight nod and then immediately turn to the person beside her. Isn't this fellow merely an ignorant apprentice who knows nothing? To come here specially to meet him, what in the world is going on? Can what physician Bai Chan said be true? From the side, squadron leader Yao had been keeping tabs on Zhang Xian. Upon witnessing Princess Mou approach that person, his breathing hastened. What physician Bai Chan said must be true, without a doubt. Otherwise, the princess wouldn't have gone to him. It was fortunate that he listened to the other party's advice and stepped down. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know how he died. However, the princess always carries herself with dignity and does not get involved with any men. If this fellow does have a relationship with her, many people will definitely soon learn about it, squadron leader Yao thought. Just as he was picturing how the bewildered faces of her suitors would look like when the news spread out, he saw Princess Mou clasp her hand and perform the formality that would only be done when a student meets her teacher. Student Mou pays respect to Zhang Laoshi. Student Mou pays respect to Zhang Laoshi. The entire room became ghastly silent. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. What is going on? Princess Mou is the second greatest genius of the kingdom, a figure who became a 1-star master teacher at such a young age, yet to respectfully greet someone younger than her as Zhang Laoshi. Where did he appear from? What rights does he have to make the princess behave in such a manner? Put on. Squadron leader Yao felt his knees go weak and he nearly kneeled onto the ground. Oh my gosh! He thought that the other party was romantically involved with the princess, but to think that the princess was actually the other party's student, is there a need for such exaggeration? It was fortunate that he didn't behave too recklessly the day before. Otherwise, even if he were to be killed on the spot, no one would have dared to speak up for him. On the other end, Ling Xiaoxiao's face became frozen. She thought that her idol was here to speak with her. She couldn't have imagined that she was here to greet this ignorant lad. Brother, didn't you not know where the master-teacher pavilion is? Didn't you not know how the master-teacher examination is conducted? Didn't you not know who Hongyi is? An insignificant and ignorant apprentice made the number 2 genius of the kingdom, the newly qualified master-teacher, Princess Mou, bow and respectfully address him as laoshi. What kind of twist is this? Even the expert beside her widened his eyes in astonishment, nearly dropping to the ground. Initially, he had been feeling somewhat dissatisfied to see the young mistress wasting her breath on this fellow. But at this moment, he realized that this ordinary-looking guy was actually a hidden expert. To be addressed by the princess as teacher based on just this fact alone, he was on an equal footing with several prestigious clans in the capital. They weren't the only ones, even Zhao Ye and the others felt bewildered. The arrogant physician Bai Chan was beaten to a pulp, but he didn't dare to retaliate. The genius princess bowed respectfully and addressed him as laoshi. Didn't Zhang laoshi say that he arrived at Tianwu Kingdom just yesterday afternoon? It had not been long since his arrival and he had already managed to cause such a huge ruckus, earning himself respect, fear, and awe. If he were to remain here for any period longer, wouldn't the pavilion master of the master-teacher pavilion have to come greet him personally as well? Ignoring everyone's shock, Zhang Xian nodded his head faintly. He was indeed worthy of the other party's bow. If not for his guidance back at Red Lotus City, it would have been impossible for her to pass the 2-star apothecary examination. Zhang laoshi, Princess Mou had intended to ask about the matter in the poison hall, but after hesitating for a moment, she decided not to bring it up, especially with such a huge crowd present. Back then, when she left Red Lotus City for Tianwu Kingdom, Zhang Xian and the Great Herb King had already set off for the poison hall. Impersonating the special envoy to enter the poison hall was extremely dangerous, so she had been worried about him. Initially, she thought that even if Zhang Xian were to return alive, it would be difficult for the two of them to meet again. But never in her dreams did she expect that she would encounter him in just a few days' time. This was why she lost herself back then and stared at him. Then, after the end of the question symposium, she couldn't hold herself back anymore and came forward to greet him. As the number 2 genius of Tianwu Kingdom, she did possess her own pride. However, after the days accompanying this young man, she realized that the little talent she possessed meant nothing before him. Mou, aren't you going to introduce him to me? Mou was about to continue speaking when a voice suddenly sounded. Then, a tall and muscular man could be seen walking over. Looking to be in his 30s, he was dressed in a long robe, and the emblem on his chest signified his identity as a 1-star master teacher. Judging from the aura he exuded and his immense strength, he was a Zhongshe realm expert. Being a 1-star teacher and a Zhongshe realm expert in just his 30s, even though his talent was beneath that of Hongyi and Mou, he wasn't too far from them. Upon seeing him, a faint look of displeasure flickered across Mou's eyes. Nevertheless, she nodded. The reason why I am able to forge a grade 2 pill and pass the 2-star apothecary examination, despite my cultivation not having reached Zhongshe realm, is due to Zhang laoshi's guidance. As such, he is half a teacher to me. The apothecary is one of the top occupations among the upper 9 paths, and under normal circumstances, a practitioner's cultivation has to reach Zhongshe realm before he can take the 2-star examination. This is because only upon achieving Zhongshe realm can one better control the heat of the cauldron, the properties of the medicinal herbs, the clash of various energies within the cauldron, and from there, forge a grade 2 pill. By merely following Zhang Xian's instructions, Mou was already able to successfully forge a grade 2 pill in the Beast Hall. Then, after continuing to learn diligently from Zhang Xian for several days in the Red Lotus City, her proficiency in pill forging improved even further. After returning to the capital, with the support from the royal family, her cultivation escalated. Even though she was still a distance away from reaching Zhongshe realm, she had already managed to reach Tongxian realm pinnacle. Under usual circumstances, no one is allowed to take the 2-star examination without first reaching Zhongshe realm. However, she successfully forged a grade 2 pill and was granted a special exception to be promoted to a 2-star apothecary. From then on, her feats became a legend. Half a teacher. For Mo sure to pass the 2-star apothecary examination at such a young age, that young man's pill forging skills must be incredible. The crowd burst into an uproar, and they stared at Zhang Xian in amazement. They finally understood why Mou regarded that young man so highly. If Mou passed the 2-star apothecary examination due to his guidance, doesn't that mean that he is superior to her in the field of pill forging? Surpassing 2-star. It can't be possible that he's a 3-star apothecary, right? A 3-star apothecary who has yet to reach 20. Everyone poured out a cold breath of air. Taught you how to forge pills? A flash gleamed across the muscular man's eyes. He turned toward Zhang Xian immediately and smiled, so it's a grandmaster apothecary. I apologize for my disrespect. My name is Jiang Chen, and I am grateful for your guidance to Princess Mou. However, Mou's eyebrows knitted together in displeasure and she spoke sharply, I don't need you to thank him for me. Hee hee. Jiang Chen laughed dryly, not giving any heed to Mou's attitude. Flinging his sleeves aside, he carried an aura of superiority as he looked at Zhang Xian. The Apothecary Guild's apothecary Hong is my friend, and he passed the 3-star apothecary examination recently. Since Zhang Laoshi is a talented apothecary as well, I believe that the two of you should be acquainted with one another. But why have I never heard of there being a genius like you in the guild? Furthermore, I know every single apothecary in the guild who is 2-star and above. May I inquire what Zhang Laoshi's grade is? Hearing what he said, everyone turned to Zhang Xian immediately, their eyes filled with curiosity. I am only a 1-star apothecary. Zhang Xian replied. He had only taken the 1-star apothecary examination and didn't think that he was a genius of any sort. Besides, he had never been to Tianwu Royal City's Apothecary Guild, so naturally, he neither knows Apothecary Hong nor possesses any fame. 1-star. A 1-star apothecary guided Princess Mou to forge a grade 2 pill. You must be joking. The hierarchy in the upper 9 paths occupation is extremely strict. How can a 1-star apothecary guide a 2-star apothecary? Everyone became baffled once again. They had seen for themselves how highly Princess Mou regarded the young man, and it felt as if she would really kneel down in admiration for the other party. Thus, they thought that the young man would be a formidable apothecary. In the end, it turned out that he was only a 1-star. Did someone make a mistake? 1-star. Jiang Chen was taken aback as well. An expression of disdain was revealed on his face but was swiftly hidden. To be able to reach 1-star at your age, Brother Zhang is indeed talented. As long as you work hard, you will surely be able to reach great heights. He had addressed the other party as Zhang Laoshi previously, but in the blink of an eye, he had amended that to Brother Zhang. He had even dropped all of the pleasantries. After which, he ignored Zhang Xian completely and turned to Princess Mou. Mou, I have prepared a feast to celebrate your successful promotion as a master teacher. Let's go. I refuse. Princess Mou shook her slender hands. This celebration feast is specially prepared for you. How can the star of the show go missing, getting rejected before such a huge crowd? Jiang Chen felt somewhat embarrassed. I still have things that I need to consult Zhang Laoshi with. Feel free to carry on with the feast without me. Mou replied coldly. It seemed that she wasn't fond of the other party. How about this? Why don't Brother Zhang come along as well? This way, you can consider it as repayment for his guidance. At which, Jiang Chen turned to Zhang Xian and said, what does Brother Zhang think? You seem like you have just arrived at the capital, and there are many VIPs joining in the celebration. Apothecary Hong will be there as well, and I can make use of this opportunity to introduce him to you. As a one-star apothecary, it will be good for you to come into contact with high-ranking apothecaries like him. I'm not free. Zhang Xian shook his head. If the other party was inviting him sincerely, he would have considered heading over after he was done with his master-teacher examination. However, Jiang Chen acted as though he was inviting Zhang Xian out of charity. Taking into account the other party's attitude, even if it were the emperor's birthday celebration, Zhang Xian wouldn't have bothered. You're not free. Jiang Chen could tolerate being rejected by Mou, but to be turned down in public by a one-star apothecary, his complexion darkened immediately, and his eyebrows shot up. He emitted the pressure of a Zhongshe realm expert. An official apothecary may possess incredible status, but that is nothing compared to a master teacher. You should reconsider your option. Don't let a moment of folly land you in deep trouble. Hey, I'm still talking to you. Hold it right there. Jiang Chen thought he could frighten the other party into obedience by pointing out the possible consequences of his rejection. However, before he could finish his words, the other party was already gone. Jiang Chen nearly fainted out of anger. As a one-star master teacher and a Zhongshe realm expert, when had anyone dared to disrespect him like that? Shaking his head, Zhang Xian disregarded the conceited fellow and stopped before Mou. Bring me over. Yes. Back in Red Lotus City, Zhang Xian had told her that he intended to take the master teacher examination. Thus, Mou immediately understood the other party's intentions, and the duo walked past Jiang Chen. This fellow, seeing how Zhang Xian disregarded Jiang Chen and left just like that, the corners of Ling Xiaoxiao's mouth twitched. Do you know who this fellow is? To ignore him like that. Even the emperor would have to give him VIP treatment, yet you ignore him. Ling Xiaoxiao was about to go forward to offer some advice when she saw Princess Mou stop before an elder and said, Wu Shi, Zhang Laoshi intends to take the master teacher examination. I will have to trouble you to make preparations. Take the master teacher examination. Ling Xiaoxiao had barely taken a step forward when she heard those words and staggered, nearly falling to the ground. It is just a moment ago that you are clueless about the master teacher examination and you want to give it a try now, brother. Are you sure you aren't joking with me? After the conversation just now, she could have confidently declared that the fellow named Zhang Xian knew nothing about master teachers. In fact, she had even suspected that Zhang Xian's master teacher apprentice emblem was bought. Does he want to take the master teacher examination, just like that? Do you know what master teachers represent? Ling Xiaoxiao felt as that she was on the brink of going insane. Jiang Chen, who intended to step forward to teach the other party a lesson, also stopped upon hearing Mou's words. His eyes narrowed, and he seemed to have fallen into deep contemplation. All right, but I'll have to check if you are qualified to take the examination. Wu Shi nodded. In the guild, he was in charge of conducting the master teacher examination, thus he was extremely well versed in the procedures. Before taking the examination, he had to ascertain that the candidate fulfilled both the internal and external conditions. The external conditions are, the recommendation from a master teacher, the identity of an assistant master teacher, and at least one supporting occupation. The internal conditions are, reaching the state of insight of the heart of tranquil water and Tongxian realm cultivation. Lu Ling had told Zhang Xian about these conditions at Tianxian Kingdom, so Zhang Xian was no stranger to them. With a flick of his wrist, he took out his master teacher apprentice emblem and one-star apothecary emblem and passed them forward. At the same time, he revealed his half-Zhongshe cultivation. With a glance, Wu Shi verified that the emblems were genuine. Thereafter, he took out a stone of insight and passed it to Zhang Xian. It's a test of your soul depth. Zhang Xian nodded. He grabbed the stone of insight and adjusted his state of mind. Jiang Shi, there's no need to get angry. He is just an ignorant countryside bumpkin. I doubt that he will even be eligible for the examination. Upon seeing Jiang Chen's darkened expression, an apprentice walked up and fawned on him. Besides, even if he is eligible for the examination, it is impossible for him to match up to you. After all, You are a genius who is born with a soul depth of 4. 0. The requirement for the master teacher examination was a soul depth of 3. 0. Most apprentices, upon achieving Heart of Tranquil Water, would only possess a soul depth of 1. 5. They would require countless years of cultivation before they are able to raise it to 3. 0. But this Zhang Chen possessed a soul depth of 4. 0 from the moment he reached Heart of Tranquil Water. His name was spread far and wide. Even though he wasn't able to match up to Mo Hongyi's 6. 0 and Mo's 5. 0, he was still ranked among the best of geniuses in the capital. Competing with me? Who does he think he is? Upon hearing those words, Zhang Chen's grim complexion lightened greatly. Other than those two monsters, he didn't fear anyone when it came to soul depth. The other party was just a nobody. He might be skilled in pill forging, but his soul depth, this is the foundation of being a master teacher, similar to what Jinqi is to a fighter. Even if the other party's soul depth had reached 3. 0, he would still be a far way off from him, who was blessed with a natural soul depth of 4. 0, the difference between 3. 0 and 4. 0 doesn't appear to be great, but this gap can only be bridged by decades of effort. Ling Xiaoxiao looked over as well. She didn't think that this ignorant fellow would possess a soul depth that was eligible for the master teacher examination. After all, have you ever met a master teacher who came for the examination without knowing what would be tested? Every other master teacher had to study and prepare for their master teacher examination in advance, not daring to slack off in any way. Yet, this fellow wants to make an attempt without knowing anything about it. Examination your head. If even this guy manages to pass the examination, didn't that mean that I, who know everything about the tests, am ready for the 2-star examination? She was thinking about what she should say if the other party's soul depth didn't meet the criteria when she heard a light buzz. The stone of insight in Zhang Xian's hands shone, and a line of digits slowly floated into appearance. Wu Shi received the stone of insight over from Zhang Xian and lowered his head to take a glance. His indifferent expression was shattered immediately, and his lips quivered uncontrollably. This, quick, let's see how much it is. Everyone was startled to see the usually calm Wu Shi behave in such a manner. With faces full of curiosity, they could not help but direct their attention to the stone of insight. With a single look, each and every single one of their bodies shuddered. Go and take a look. Full of pride, Jiang Chen refused to go forward and instead, sent his apprentice. The young man nodded and walked forward. But when he returned, he had an expression that seemed as if he had just seen a ghost. Why? Can it be that his soul depth matches me, Jiang Chen? Did he attain 4. 0 as well? Jiang Chen frowned. I come from a clan of master teachers, and from young, I have been receiving guidance from master teachers. This is also the reason why I can achieve such a high soul depth upon reaching Heart of Tranquil Water. How can a wild brat like him compare with me? How much is it? With an extremely red face, the apprentice spoke hesitantly, he 5. 1. Put on. Jiang Chen's body swayed, and he immediately felt his heart stifle. The heck? He had just claimed that this fellow could never compare up to him, and his soul depth was revealed to be 5. 1. This was superior even to that of Princess Mou. Jiang Chen could feel fresh blood welling up in his mouth. 5. 1. This, Ling Xiaoxiao's eyes widened in shock. Brother, you have achieved a soul depth of 5. 1 and yet you don't know what the master teacher examination tests are about? Do you live under a stone? 5. 1, that's already the level of a top-notch genius. With just a bit of effort, your soul depth will be able to reach 6. 0, and you will be eligible to take the 2-star master teacher examination. Despite the geniuses that have appeared in Tianwu Kingdom over the years, less than a handful became 2-star master teachers. The person whom she thought to be an ignorant countryside bumpkin suddenly became an absolute genius. Ling Xiaoxiao's face reddened, and for a long while, she was unable to say a single word. soul depth of 5. 1. You are a genius among geniuses. Let's go to the field, I'll conduct the examination for you right now. With a greatly agitated expression, Wu Shi took large strides as he headed out of the room. Zhang Xian and the others quickly followed behind him. In no time, the group arrived at a vast hall. At the very end of the hall were 5 tightly shut doors. The 5 tests for the Master Teacher examination are House of Trust, Supporting Occupation Pavilion, Puppet Hall, Cultivation Technique Ocean, and Unerring Pavilion. If you have students, you can have them enter that room. As long as their trust level exceeds 50, you will pass the first test. Pointing to the very first door, Wu Shi said. Having heard the rules from Ling Xiaoxiao, Zhang Xian nodded and beckoned for Zhao Ye and the others to come closer. These are my students. They, glancing at the crowd before looking back at Zhang Xian, a sliver of doubt flashed across Wu Shi's eyes. Usually, there would be a significant age gap between the teacher and student because it would be easier to establish a trust that way. Taking, for example, if a 20-year-old man were to teach a 7-year-old child, he would be likely to hold unconditional trust for your words. However, if that same man were to teach a 16-year-old teenager, putting aside whether he would trust your words, it would be a problem in itself to have him acknowledge you as his teacher. Why should he? This was exactly the situation before him. This Zhang Laoshi appeared to be below 20, but his students were 16 to 17, and there was a small age gap. Are you sure that the trust level these students have in you exceeds 50? That may I ask how long have you taught these students for? After hesitating for a moment, Wu Shi asked. While the small difference in age posed a problem, it could be made up with time. If one could impress his students with his guidance over time, the trust level would surely rise. Around half a month, then, after hesitating for a moment, Zhang Xian added sheepishly, for that half a month, I've been out often, so adding it all up, it's probably only around 5 to 6 days. 5 to 6 days, Wu Shi's body swayed violently, and he nearly passed out. He stared at the fellow before him as if he were looking at a monster. When others take the Master Teacher examination, they would bring students whom they have groomed for numerous years. This way, the trust level would be higher, increasing the likelihood that they pass the examination. Yet, you sure are bold bringing students whom you have taught for just 5 to 6 days. Are you sure that their trust level in you exceeds 50? What's wrong? Zhang Xian didn't know that there were so many things to consider about deciding on which student to deploy, so he felt perplexed. That it's nothing. I would like to ask if you have any other students whom you have taught for a longer period of time or are younger. Fearing that the other party wouldn't understand his meaning, Wu Shi explained patiently. There's none. They are the ones whom I have taught for the longest period of time, as well as the youngest. Zhang Xian nodded. Wu Shi rolled his eyes. The heck? They are almost the same age as you and you've only taught them for 5 to 6 days. And you say that they are your youngest students, those whom you have taught for the longest period of time? You must be pulling my leg. Feeling dismayed, Wu Shi was thinking about how he should explain to that fellow when the other party shot him a doubtful look. If they won't do, I have taught Princess Mou for a few days as well. She can give it a try too. Give it a try. Try your head. Do you think that the Master Teacher examination is a joke? He thought that since the other party had a soul depth of 5. 1, a top-notch talent, it shouldn't have been a problem for him to pass the examination. Yet, to think that even such simple words could not get through to him. If these are your only students, you can get them to enter. However, allow me to remind you in advance. Their trust levels in you must reach at least 50 in order for you to pass. If they don't, you can only try again the next time. Forcefully suppressing his own feelings of frustration, Wu Shi couldn't be bothered to explain any further. I understand. Zhang Xian turned to Zhao Ye and the others. You all should enter. Yes. Zhao Ye and the others nodded their heads before stepping into the room. Drip a droplet of fresh blood here. Just like the crystal ball used to test trust level, all kinds of illusions will appear in this room to assess your students' trust in you. Eventually, the result will appear on the wall. Seeing the fellow urge his students to enter without even giving them any instructions, Wushi felt increasingly dumbstruck. At this point in time, he was no longer carrying any expectations for him. Other teachers would explain to their students what they should do upon encountering the illusion to hint their students about how they can achieve a higher trust level, yet he didn't even bother to say anything. It was a wonder how someone like him became a teacher. It was true that Zhang Xian wasn't aware of the rules for the master-teacher examination, but from his perspective, there wasn't really a need for any clarifications. He simply came to the front and released a droplet of blood onto a pedestal. Wang! With a light ring, the entire House of Trust burst into action, and a glaring radiance filled the room. Seeing that the first test of the master-teacher examination had begun, the crowd, who had followed along, focused on the tightly shut doors with great anxiety. To bring similarly aged students whom he had taught for just 5 to 6 days, it would already be considered incredible if his trust level reaches 20. Jiang Qin sneered coldly. Even though the master-teacher examination was difficult, there were certain tricks. As a one-star master teacher who came from a clan of master teachers, he was well aware of the ways to maximize the possibility of passing the examination. One's trust level toward one's parents would be only around 60, while this test required a trust level of 50 at the minimum. This was equivalent to trust that people have for their own siblings. How can he establish a trust of this level with students whom he had taught for just a few days? Putting aside a star teacher, even one-star teachers are unable to induce this level of trust in similarly aged students within such a short period of time. Did you really only teach these students for 5 to 6 days? Jiang Chen wasn't the only one who thought so. Mou could not help but ask Zhang Xian. Actually, if I were to add up the time I've been together with them, it's only about 15 to 16 hours. Zhang Xian contemplated for a moment before answering. During the period he was teaching Zhao Ye and the others, he was busy every single day with many different things. Thus, he would often just lecture and correct their flaws in the morning before disappearing in the afternoon. Thus, the time in which they spent together might only add up to a total of 15 to 16 hours. 15 to 16 hours. Princess Mou saw her vision turn gray for a moment. What kind of trust can you establish in such a short period of time? She thought that this fellow was well prepared, that's why she brought him here. To think that he would be so unreliable, look, the trust level is out. Just as she was considering how she should explain the matter to this fellow and have him prepare himself properly before retaking the examination, she heard someone from among the crowd shout. Mou turned to look immediately. Wang! The first door trembled violently, and a row of digits slowly appeared on its surface. What? How is that possible? Mou, Jiang Chen, and the others exclaimed in shock. The trust level of life and death kindreds. This is what only a 5-star master teacher can achieve. Wushi trembled vigorously in agitation. All of the master teachers who tagged along fell silent, displaying their shock for the numbers before them. The 2 large digits that hung on the door were exceptionally conspicuous, but those looking at it couldn't help but doubt their eyes. 85. Chapter 304, No Mistake. The relationship between parent and child was around 60, while with one spouse, it was around 70. Beyond that was the level at which both parties would be willing to die for one another, life and death kindreds. This was the level at which both parties had unreserved trust for one another. They would willingly die for the sake of one another if there was a need to. This was a level that would only appear in students taught by a 5-star master teacher. Jiang Chen had just said that it would be impossible for the trust level to even reach 20, and such a situation occurred in the very next moment. He felt a stinging sensation on his face as though someone had slapped him hard and dislocated his lower jaw. He stared at the numbers with his mouth agape. He only taught his students for only 5 to 6 days. Have you ever seen anyone reaching such a high level of trust after teaching for just a few days? If you can reach this level after such a short period of time, doesn't that mean that if you were to teach them for a few years, you would reach 90 and above? The heck! Even a 5-star master teacher would be incapable of such a feat. Soul depth of 5. 1. Trust level of 85. This countryside bumpkin was about to charge through the heavens. Ling Xiaoxiao's slender body trembled, and 10,000 mud horses raced across her mind. Bringing over new students who were around the same age as him, it was clear that the young man was a newbie who didn't know a single thing about the master-teacher examination. Yet, it was the same person who casually blasted their eyes with a trust level of 85. She felt helpless and frenzied. Mou's mouth twitched violently as well. She had guessed long ago that Zhang Laoshi would surely pass this test. However, she had never expected him to do it so overwhelmingly with such inconceivable results. One must know that she had brought students who she had groomed for 3 years for her test, but their trust level only reached 52. Even the students brought here by the number 1 genius of the kingdom, Hongyi, only had a trust level of 55. Those students had been following him since they were 7, and at the time of the examination, they were only 11. Regardless of whether it was the age of Zhang Xian's students or the duration he had guided them for. The result of the House of Trust was completely inconceivable, to the point that they started to doubt if it was malfunctioning. Jia. The door opened and the slightly fatigued Xiaoya and the others walked out. They turned around and glanced at the trust level on the door. "I'm sorry, teacher," the few of them apologized. On the inside, they felt that they would trust Zhang Laoshi unconditionally no matter what he did, or else, they wouldn't have left their kin to follow him here. Thus, upon seeing the result of the test, they felt embarrassed. Seeing their expressions, the crowd immediately suffered billions of damage. Not only was the teacher a monster, the students were monsters as well. To be discontent with a trust level of 85, why don't you all just go and die, cough cough. Seeing that the master teachers and apprentices were traumatized and rendered speechless by this matter, Wu Shi immediately coughed to draw everyone's attention. With a trust level of 85, you passed the first test. We'll move on to the second test now, Supporting Occupation Pavilion. The content of the test for the Supporting Occupation Pavilion will naturally be on your supporting occupation. However, as your supporting occupation is that of an apothecary, I will have to warn you in advance. He said as he turned towards Zhang Xian. For the 1-star apothecary examination, you have to forge a grade 1 pill. However, the test for the supporting occupation pavilion is different. What it tests is not your understanding on pill forging, but your ability to impart your knowledge. That's to say, even if you are a 3-star apothecary, if you are incapable of guiding others on pill forging, you will be deemed to have failed this test. The results of the test will be determined by 2 factors. Firstly, the level of the pill you have forged. Formation, satiation, perfection, and inscribed pill, the higher the level, the better your results. Secondly, the number of errors you make in your guidance. For every error made, you will have points deducted from your score. Do you understand? After explaining the content of the test, Wu Shi asked. I understand. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Even though he was a 1-star apothecary, he passed the examination through pill debate. As such, he was unable to even forge a grade 1 pill. For him, guiding others was much easier. With all of the books from the Tianxian Kingdom Apothecary Guild in his head, even if he didn't use the Library of Heaven's Path, he would still be able to guide others to forge a grade 1 pill with ease. Good, you may enter. Wu Shi gestured. Not wasting any time, Zhang Xian walked in. Do you all think he will be able to pass this test? Even Mo Shi has addressed him as teacher, he must possess incredible aptitude in pill forging. Passing shouldn't be an issue, I only wonder what his results will be. Just like the House of Trust, the maximum score that one can get in the supporting occupation pavilion is 100 points, and the passing score is 50. The difference in occupation will result in a difference in judging criteria. For a painter to pass, he has to guide someone to paint a second-level painting. Since he is an apothecary, as long as a pill is successfully formed, he should be able to reach 50 points and pass the examination. Indeed. Back then, when Hongyi took the supporting occupation pavilion test, he was tested on his occupation as a formation master. With his score of 60, he created a huge commotion back then. Reaching a score of 60 means that one's understanding of one's supporting occupation has already exceeded the level of a 1-star. To be achieve such results for the 1-star master teacher examination, only a genius like him is capable of doing so. However, this fellow's soul depth is 5.1 and his students' trust level is 85. I think that his results won't be low. You're right. However, forging a pill by yourself and guiding another person to do the same are two completely different matters. I think that reaching 55 will already be a huge hurdle for him. The crowd started discussing as they saw Zhang walk into the supporting occupation pavilion. What the supporting occupation pavilion tested was one's ability to guide others on the occupation, not their own mastery in the occupation. There were many geniuses who came to take the examination, only to leave the examination hall disappointed. Even though Zhang Xian's soul depth and house of trust results have astonished the crowd, most people didn't think that he would do well for the second test. Jia. The doors closed. Zhang Xian scanned the room. It was a room of around 20 meters in length and width, and there was a massive cauldron placed in the center of the room. It looks like this room will change according to the supporting occupation of the examinee. Zhang Xian was taken aback when he saw the cauldron. However, after giving the matter some thought, he came to a realization. The supporting occupation pavilion would change its interiors depending on the supporting occupation of the examinee. Since Zhang Xian's supporting occupation was apothecary, naturally, a cauldron would be placed at the center of the room. Who? Just as Zhang Xian was wondering how the test would be carried out, a puppet walked over to the side of the cauldron. Zhang Xian couldn't tell what the puppet was made of, but it seemed no different from a human apart from its completely impassive expression. Before the puppet was a row of around 40 to 50 different medicinal herbs. Green-leafed split palm flower, rootless grass, white angelica flower. Am I supposed to forge a grade 1 spirit-enriching pill? Zhang Xian deduced as he examined at the medicinal herbs. Based on his knowledge on pill forging, even without using the library of Heaven's Path, he could tell what kind of pill these ingredients could make. Right as he was discerning the various herbs present, the puppet started to move. Lighting the flame, warming the cauldron, placing the medicinal herbs in. Even though the puppet's movements weren't fluid, they were orderly and sequential. It is impossible for a pill to be formed like that. With a glance, Zhang Xian shook his head. Pill forging was just like executing a battle technique. Even with the same herbs and the same forging sequence, if the person forging it was different, the result would be different as well. Although the sequence in which the puppet placed the medicinal herbs in was correct, the puppet failed to grasp the timings well, resulting in multiple conflicts between the medicinal properties of the various herbs. Under such circumstances, the pill forging was inevitably bound to end in failure. Bo. As expected, when the pill forging came to an end and the cauldron was opened, black smoke immediately billowed out. Failure. To pass this examination, you have to guide the puppet to successfully forge the pill. A voice sounded. It seemed like the examinee was supposed to carefully watch the forging process of the puppet and determine the errors in its movements so as to guide it when it forges for the second time. As soon as those words sounded, the puppet started forging once more. Its actions were exactly the same as before. If it was an ordinary apothecary, it would be impossible for him to forge another pill in the exact same way as he did before. Probably, only this kind of specially created puppet could follow instructions so precisely. However, this is better for me. Unlike humans, puppets won't suffer from lapses in concentration. As long as it strictly follows my instructions, it will surely be able to forge the pill out. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Back then, when he instructed Mou on forging a grade 2 pill back in the Beast Hall, it was due to her concentration wandering that the pill forging nearly failed. Humans have emotions, be it happiness, sadness, or anger, and these could affect the result of the pill forged. However, puppets were different. They would strictly follow the instructions given to them, so it was impossible for them to make any mistakes. Slow the igniting process of the flame by half a breath, and extend the warming of the cauldron by 4 breaths. Wait a moment. Alright, begin. Understanding this, Zhang Xian smiled. Standing on the spot, he muttered instruction after instruction. In the hall outside, everyone's gaze was fixated on the number on the door. He should already be guiding the puppet by now. Someone shouted. That's right. Different from the House of Trust, the score of the supporting occupation hall will be reflected on the door as soon as the test begins. As correct instructions are issued by the examinee, the score increases. On the other hand, if erroneous instructions were to be issued, the score decreases. This way, we can see his result real-time. Back then, when Hongyi guided a puppet to set up a formation, the points kept increasing and there were only 5 occasions where the score fell. That is to say, he has only made 5 errors. Indeed. Even Pavilion Master Zhang made 7 mistakes when he took the 2-star Master Teacher examination. Yet, Hongyi only made 5. This in itself is making history. I wonder how will the fellow inside fare. Even if he's a genius, his soul depth is only 5. 1, compared to Hongyi Mo Shi's 6. 0, he is still slightly lacking. I think that his mistakes should probably number at least 10. I think so too. It should be above 10. Everyone were chattering wildly about the situation. Look, the score is starting to increase. Another voice broke all of the discussions in the room. All gazes swiftly fell onto the door. The number which appeared previously was slowly increasing. 10. 11. 12. Not bad, his score is increasing steadily. This means that he hasn't made any errors so far. I am impressed. It's just a matter of time before he makes a mistake. After all, who can guarantee that he will be able to guide someone perfectly? Your words make sense, the crowd nodded as they watched the number on the door. Initially, they were still chatting casually, but as time went by, their faces slowly turned grim. It's already 40 and he hasn't made a single error. The eyes of all the master teachers in the room widened, as though they were looking at a fearsome monster. The number on the door has already reached 40 but it hasn't decreased a single time yet. This meant that from the start of the pill forging, Zhang Xian hasn't issued a single erroneous instruction. Mud horses dash, it is a homophone for a vulgarity in Chinese. Chapter 305, Hongyi goes into a frenzy. 45, no mistakes. 50, no mistakes. 55, no mistakes. The unceasing voice gradually grew fainter and slower, as if the one speaking was finally overcome by disbelief. Since the score had reached 55 without a single error, it meant to say that the pill forging was already more than halfway through to make no errors for the entire former half of the examination. Even that invincible genius, Hongyi, wasn't capable of such feat back then. It could even be said that no master teacher in Tianwu Kingdom had ever achieved such an impressive result. This impossible. It wouldn't be possible for even a 3-star apothecary to offer such perfect guidance. He is just a countryside bumpkin. What basis does he have to achieve that? Jiang Chen's mouth quivered, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Even though one merely has to guide the puppet to forge a grade 1 pill, the answer key was based on the forging process of a 4-star apothecary. At 4-star, an apothecary's understanding toward medicinal pills has reached an extremely profound level. They are already capable of forging grade 1 pills impeccably. Thus, using their forging process as an answer key was more than appropriate. For the fellow inside to forge the pill without any errors, what does that mean? Can it be that his comprehension of pill forging is already comparable to that of a 4-star apothecary? How is that possible? The most capable apothecary in the entire of Tianwu Kingdom, the guild leader of the Apothecary Guild, was only a 3-star apothecary primary stage. Just like the newly promoted apothecary Hong, he was still a long way from reaching 4-star. Yet, a youngster below 20 has managed to reach the level of a 4-star. Can it be that what Princess Mou said is true? Someone within the crowd muttered. Upon hearing those words, the eyes of the crowd narrowed involuntarily. Previously, Mou, a 2-star apothecary, said that Zhang Xian was half a teacher to her, and if not for him, she wouldn't have successfully passed the examination. Back then, most of the crowd found it hard to believe. Then, when he revealed his apothecary grade 1 star, everyone thought that the princess had exaggerated her words. A mere 1-star apothecary. How skilled and knowledgeable can he be? But after witnessing the result he obtained in this supporting occupation pavilion, they realized that it was all true. If it wasn't true, then the situation that had unfolded before them couldn't be explained. Don't worry, he will definitely make an error soon. Even a 4-star apothecary can't promise to forge a 1-star pill perfectly each time. Veins popped out on Jiang Chen's temple. Unable to accept the situation, a ferocious expression had crept onto his face subconsciously. He thought that this fellow would make a disgrace out of himself once the examination started. Who would have thought that he would be so formidable, going against all odds and not making a single mistake in the entire first half? 60, no mistakes. Without care for the astonished expression on the audience's faces, the digit on the wall continued to increase steadily without any signs of stopping. He has already broken Mo Hongyi, Mo Shi's record. I thought that this record would remain unbroken for at least several centuries, to think that it would be broken in just a few years' time. This Zhang Xian's understanding of pill forging is simply too formidable. Not only is his score high, the crux is that he hasn't made a single mistake. Will he really create a new record? Who knows? In any case, based on the current flow of events he will surely make a new record. Just that, I wonder how far he can go. 65, 70, or 75. Accompanying the unceasing rise in his score, everyone grew progressively nervous. Wu Shi, who was in charge of conducting the examination, felt his body stiffen, and sweat flowed down his forehead incessantly. He had conducted uncountable examinations throughout the years, but it was his first time witnessing such a situation. Despite having exceeded 60 points, Zhang Xian hadn't made a single error. No one would have believed it if they hadn't seen it for themselves. Wait, look, he made a mistake. Wang. Just when everyone began to think that the fellow would continue his streak until the end of the examination, the number on the wall flickered all of a sudden, and from 60, it dropped to 59. Since the score dropped, it meant that there was an erroneous instruction. He finally made a mistake. I thought that he might complete the test without making any mistake. Phew, indeed, didn't I say so? How can there be anyone who doesn't make a mistake guiding another on pill forging? It wouldn't be logical. Seeing the dip in the score, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. If he were to really achieve a perfect score, that would be truly scary. That would mean that the fellow inside was way beyond their league. They felt relieved that that wasn't the case. As time passes, the rise in temperature and the increasing medicinal herbs in the cauldron makes errors more likely to happen. Even if he made no mistakes in the earlier half, there is no guarantee that he can keep this up for the rest of the process. In fact, most of the errors should be made toward the end. A master teacher within the crowd, who had a supporting occupation as an apothecary, stroked his beard. The crowd nodded in approval of his words. That was also why it was so difficult to become an official apothecary. Due to the flame beneath the cauldron, the temperature within would just grow higher and higher as time passes. Furthermore, while fusing two medicinal herbs together may be easy, fusing dozens at once might result in all kinds of unexpected conflicts. This is similar to stacking blocks of wood. Stacking 2 pieces of wood may be easy, but when it comes to stacking several hundred of them, putting aside how they are stacked toward the end, a single error at the start can possibly result in a poor foundation and an unstable center of gravity, and all of your work might end up in vain. The slightest mistake would cause miles of difference. It was the same any other thing. The further one got, the greater the difficulty. Zhang Xian's flying start had indeed shocked them all, but once a mistake occurred, it would be as if dripping a droplet of ink into clear water, resulting in an irreversible domino effect. I thought that you would never make a mistake. Jiang Chen also heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to continue speaking, his eyes suddenly narrowed into 2 thin slits. The number on the door, which had just decreased, flickered again before increasing abruptly. Zila. 62. In a silent chamber inside the master-teacher pavilion. Seated within, Hongyi was in the midst of adjusting his breath. Wave after wave of visible spiritual energy absorbed into his skin, slowly but steadily pulling his cultivation to higher heights. Who? He opened his eyes all of a sudden and revealed his displeasure. Didn't I say that no one is to interrupt me when I'm cultivating? Jia. The door opened, and a servant walked in fearfully. I don't mean to interrupt your highness, just that, at this moment, he hesitated with his words. Speak. Hongyi frowned. It's because someone is taking the 1-star master-teacher examination. The servant spoke up hastily. The master-teacher is the world's #1 occupation, and many view it as their dream. Every day, countless people travel to the master-teacher pavilion from all around the world in hopes of achieving their goal, but those who do pass amount to less than a handful. Hongyi thought that it would be something important. However, after hearing the servant's words, he shook his head and said indifferently, Did you interrupt my cultivation just for this matter? If that's the case, go ahead to receive your punishment. 100 whips, not a single one less. He hated to be interrupted during his training, and as such, he made a rule stating that anyone who interrupted him without a good reason would be punished. Upon hearing the punishment that his master had issued, the servant shuddered and hurriedly added, It's not just that the one taking the examination has a soul depth of 5. 1. Soul depth of 5. 1. Even higher than MOU? A gleam flashed across Hongyi's eyes. Without a doubt, the news had surprised him. That isn't anything much. However, to be able to achieve such a soul depth during the 1-star master-teacher examination, he is indeed talented. Even though Hongyi was surprised, he didn't think too much of the matter. He was a genius whose soul depth exceeded 6. 0, a mere 5. 1 didn't mean anything to him. A person with a soul depth of 5. 1 taking the master-teacher examination is indeed a huge affair. However, it isn't good enough a reason to interrupt my cultivation. Go back and take 50 whips. Hongyi waved his hands and returned back to his cultivation. Your Highness, I'm not done yet. Seeing that his master was about to return to his training, the servant hurriedly spoke up. Is there anything else? Hongyi frowned. That person taking the examination is known as Zhang Xian, and he seems to be below 20. Just a moment ago, he brought a few 16 to 17-year-old students into the House of Trust and he achieved a trust level of 85. Afraid that he would incur his master's displeasure if he wasted his time, the servant spoke swiftly. House of Trust 85 points. Hongyi lost his calm and stood up abruptly. He had never heard of any teacher in Tianwu Kingdom who could induce such trust in his students. This completely exceeded his expectations. Yes. The young man nodded his head and his disbelief was apparent as well. Not only so, he is currently undergoing the second test, supporting Occupation Pavilion and managed to reach 60 points without making a single mistake. Reached 60 points. How is that possible? Hongyi's face warped in shock. He was the one man who scored the best result in the supporting Occupation Pavilion throughout the past 1,000 years of history of the guild. Even so, he had made 5 errors. Yet, the other party hadn't made a single mistake. didn't this mean that the other party was even more talented than him? Yes, however, this is where weird things started to happen. At 60 points, he made a single mistake, so a point got deducted. However, in the next instant, his score leaped to 62. Up until now, the youngster still unable to understand what was going on. He had even suspected that the scoreboard was malfunctioning. After getting a point deducted, his score decreased to 59, but in the next moment, it increased to 62. Hongyi had never heard of such a situation either, and he became stupefied. That's the case. At this point, the servant hesitated once more. Furthermore, such a situation was repeated 3 times afterward. A point was deducted first before 3 points were swiftly added, points were deducted before being added again. What's going on? The scoreboard of the Master-Teacher Pavilion was created with the efforts of a formation grandmaster and countless master teachers. For the last several thousand years, it has never once malfunctioned. Why would it behave like this all of a sudden? Hongyi felt perplexed. Has anyone checked if it is damaged? Wu Shi, who is in charge of the examination, checked the scoreboard on the spot and has confirmed that there is nothing wrong with it, the servant said. If there's no error, why would his score be added back after being deducted? This Hongyi shook his head. Then, he suddenly froze upon a certain thought, and his eyes narrowed to small slits. What did you say just now? The situation happened after he reached 60 points, and repeated itself for another 3 more times afterward? Yes. The young servant nodded. Then Hongyi's lips quivered. What is his current score? The first time it happened, Zhang Xian's score reached 62. If it happened another 3 times, didn't that mean that his score had already exceeded 62? Judging by how his point would increase by a total of 2 every time the situation occurred, his score would be at minimum 68 by now. Achieving 68 points in the supporting occupation pavilion? Such a score is completely unimaginable. Can that fellow called Zhang Xian really be more talented than me? How is that possible? His current score is. Upon recalling the score, the servant's face contorted immediately as if he had thought of something terrifying. His body trembled, and his mouth opened and closed for several times before words escaped from his quivering lips. 101 points. Chapter 306, The Expert, 101. Hongyi's shuddered violently and he nearly fell onto the ground. The heck? The maximum score in the supporting occupation pavilion is 100 and you tell me 101? Are you for real? It was no wonder why this servant was trembling as if he had gone mad. If Hongyi were in his place, he would be shivering as well. Managing to achieve 60 points back then had already made him the idol of countless people. What in the world is 101? What's key is that 101 doesn't seem to be the conclusion. His points are still increasing, and until now, the test at the supporting occupation pavilion has not yet ended, the servant added in. The test isn't over yet. Hongyi felt a sudden urge to rip out his hair. Achieving 60 points in the supporting occupation pavilion for his 1-star master-teacher examination had made him a legend, but now, the other party had reached 101 and the test had yet to end. Madness. The world has gone mad. Let's go and take a look. Unable to endure any longer, Hongyi lifted his legs and made his way out immediately. Your Highness, about my punishment, the servant was about to follow along when he recalled something. Punishment? What punishment? Go and claim your reward, 10 night illumination pearls, and 1 steel sword. Taking big strides, Hongyi continued his way to the examination hall. Upon hearing that not only was the punishment abolished but that there were also generous rewards, the servant knew that he had made the correct decision reporting this matter to the master. Overjoyed, he chased after Hongyi hurriedly. The same situation was also occurring at several other locations. In the Apothecary Guild. Congratulations, congratulations. Apothecary Hong, congratulations on your breakthrough. You have finally taken the final step and became a 3-star apothecary. You have my admiration and respect. Indeed. Back then, we took the 2-star apothecary examination together, but in the end, you are the only one who has managed to reach this level. Numerous apothecaries surrounded a middle-aged man. Dressed in a long robe, a prominent emblem decorated with 3 stars was pinned on his chest. He was the person who reached 3-star not long ago, Apothecary Hong. He took the examination a few days ago, and today, the emblem representing his new identity finally arrived. The most formidable apothecary in Tianwu Kingdom's Apothecary Guild was also a 3-star. At his grade, he was already standing toe-to-toe with the guild leader. There's no need for all of you to be so modest. I happened to meet an expert when I was out a while back, and his guidance has enlightened me. If not for him, I couldn't have imagined how long I would take before I can reach this level. Apothecary Hong said. Even if you meet an expert, you need to possess the wisdom to decipher his words. I wonder when I can reach 3-star like you. Seeing the Apothecary Hong responding to their praises with such humility, another apothecary shook his head with a bitter smile. Teacher. At this moment, an apprentice apothecary barged into the room in a hurry. Calm down, it is unseemly to panic like that. Upon realizing that the apprentice was his student, Apothecary Hong flung his hand. Yes. The apprentice halted, panting heavily to catch his breath. I told you to ask Master Teacher Zhang Chen about the feast. What did he say? Will Princess Mou be attending? Apothecary Hong asked. The apprentice was taken aback by his teacher's question. I haven't asked him. You didn't ask him? Apothecary Hong's face darkened in rage. If you can't accomplish such a simple task, don't bother calling me teacher anymore. The apprentice's face paled. Apothecary Hong was a 3-star apothecary, and as his student, he would have a huge advantage when taking the 1-star apothecary examination in the future. If he were to be expelled from his tutelage, he would lose all hopes of becoming an apothecary in this lifetime. Teacher, I have a reason for panicking. Just now someone was taking the 1-star master teacher examination and he entered the supporting occupation pavilion. He chose pill forging and the apprentice's body shuddered. What's wrong? Did he achieve a score of 60? Is his score higher than that of Mo Hongyi Mo sure? Apothecary Hong waved his arm. The student quivered for a moment before replying, he scored 101 points. What? 101 points. Apothecary Hong's entire body trembled, and his eyes nearly popped out from their sockets. His face spoke of nothing but disbelief. Even though the master teacher and the apothecary were 2 separate occupations, many formidable master teachers chose apothecary as their supporting occupation, so he was very familiar with how master teachers worked. The maximum score for the supporting occupation hall is 100. For someone to score 101, what in the world is going on? 101 points in the supporting occupation hall. Let's go and take a look. After hearing the apprentice's words, everyone went into a frenzy. All of them rushed out of the Apothecary Guild. To score 101 for instructing a puppet in pill forging in the supporting occupation hall, how incredible must that person be? They felt that this was a sight they mustn't miss. The Apothecary Guild was located nearby the Master Teacher Pavilion and it didn't take long for them to arrive at the examination hall. The hall, by this time, was already flooded with people, and all of their gazes were fixated on the tightly shut door. Zhang Shi, what is going on? Scanning the surroundings, Apothecary Hong finally noticed a familiar figure and walked over. That person was Jiang Chen. At this moment, his eyes were opened so wide that they might drop out at any moment. His body was shaking uncontrollably, his fists were tightly clenched by the side, and he had an expression full of fear. Upon seeing Apothecary Hong, he pointed to the door in front with a shaky finger. Take a look for yourself, Un. Lifting his head, Apothecary Hong saw the numbers on the door and his body wobbled, causing him to nearly fall to the ground. 130? how can it be 130? Isn't the maximum score for the supporting occupation pavilion 100? He exclaimed in shock. The number 130 was displayed prominently on the door. The number seemed to pierce into the hearts of those who laid their sight on it. The apothecaries behind him froze on the spot, dumbfounded. I am not sure what happened as well. Jiang Chen shook his head. He, too, felt that the situation was insane. Perhaps there is a problem with the supporting occupation pavilion. Otherwise, how can it be possible for someone to achieve such a result? A problem? That's right. There must be a problem with the system. Otherwise, how can one achieve such a high score? If there's a problem, this result should be invalidated and a retest should be conducted. Someone chirped in. The maximum score was 100, yet someone shoved a 130 in their faces. It was natural that anyone would think this way. I'll talk to Wu Shi later. Jiang Chen nodded, but halfway through his words, a voice interjected. The examination hall is a spiritual treasure that the Master Teacher Pavilion specially tasked experts to create, so it is impossible that it contains any faults. Not expecting someone to refute his words so disrespectfully, Jiang Chen was about to rebuke when he obtained a clear look at the other party's appearance, immediately suppressing himself. Since Mo Shi said that it isn't a problem with the supporting occupation pavilion, then what is going on? The one who refuted his words was the number one genius of the kingdom, Mo Hongyi. He had also received the shock of his life after witnessing the results displayed on the door. I've heard of a legend regarding the master-teacher examination, but I'm unsure of its authenticity. Mo Hongyi said with a grim face. Looking at his grave expression, the surrounding crowd turned uniformly to focus their attention on him. Even Wu Shi, who was conducting the examination, turned to look at him as well. In the supporting occupation pavilion, what is tested is one's ability to guide another. A wrong guidance results in the deduction of 1 point, and a correct guidance results in an addition of a point. Everyone should know this, so I will not elaborate any further. Mo Hongyi said. The crowd nodded. However, have all of you ever thought about how the supporting occupation pavilion judges whether one's actions are correct? Mo Hongyi surveyed the surroundings and continued, just like the apothecary test going on now, the so-called correct procedure is based on the standards of a 4-star apothecary forging the same pill. What if one were to judge the process from the perspective of a 5-star or 6-star apothecary? This everyone's body trembled simultaneously. Knowledge was relative. Something that a 1-star apothecary thinks to be a fundamental law might not necessarily be true in the eyes of a 3-star apothecary. A child might think that the sky is round and the earth is flat, but the same could not be said about an adult. The assumption for judgment in the supporting occupation pavilion is that the forging procedure created by the 4-star apothecary is entirely correct. If one's pill forging standards haven't reached 4-star, one would think that there is no mistake in his actions. However, what if one's skills and knowledge surpasses 4-star? If a 5-star, 6-star, or even 7-star apothecary were to come, will he think that the forging procedure is perfect? That might not necessarily be so. In the eyes of such an expert, the model answer might actually be filled with mistakes. Are you saying that the fellow taking the examination inside possesses knowledge that already exceeds that of a 4-star apothecary? How could Jiang Chen possibly believe this? How can that seemingly ordinary lad actually be such an incredible apothecary? If that's not the case, how can you explain why a point is deducted before 3 is added? In the supporting occupation pavilion, a single mistake that is pointed out should award only 1 point, the total score rising in increments of 1. With a grim expression, Mo Hongyi continued, the person taking the test inside must have found loopholes in the answer key, and initially, these were judged by the supporting occupation pavilion to be mistakes. However, the supporting occupation pavilion is a treasure which possesses intelligence. It realized that the modifications that the examinee made allowed the pill forging process to continue more smoothly, so it compensated for the points immediately, and awarded double bonus points for discovering the loophole. The crowd's eyes narrowed involuntarily. So that is to say, has the person inside found 15 mistakes in the pill forging procedure of a 4-star apothecary? If one were to follow the forging procedure of 4-star apothecary perfectly, one would be able to attain a score of 100 points. However, given that the score had reached 130, it meant that Zhang Xian had found 15 mistakes in the model answer provided by a 4-star apothecary. The heck? Is he human? Other than this, I truly can't think of any other possibility. Mo Hongyi shook his head. Now that Mo Shi mentioned it, I recall having read about this situation while browsing through books regarding the master-teacher examination. However, as no one has managed to achieve such a feat for a very long time, it became forgotten. Seeming to have remembered something, Wu Shi could not help but remark. Having had 2 master teachers verify the situation, the crowd realized that it was highly likely to be the case. Nonetheless, they continued to find the situation hard to believe. Not only did the person inside notice the mistakes intentionally incorporated into the puppet, he was even able to point out the flaws left behind by the 4-star apothecary. If so, what is the actual standard that the fellow inside possesses as an apothecary? Who is the person inside? Can it be that he is an elder in the apothecary guild? Apothecary Hong could not help but ask. He isn't an elder, he is merely a 1-star apothecary. What's more, he hasn't even reached 20 years of age. His name is Jia. Just as Jiang Chen was about to speak his name, the door of the supporting occupation pavilion opened all of a sudden. A young man walked out slowly from within. Zhang Xian. Why is he here? Apothecary Hong burst out in shock. Apothecary Hong, do you know him? A 2-star apothecary that had followed behind him asked immediately. Apothecary Hong's face paled. He is the one who helped me achieve a breakthrough in my pill forging, the expert whom I just spoke of. Chapter 307, How Many Moves? Expert. The several 2-star apothecaries at the back glanced at one another in astonishment. That's right. Didn't someone request to purchase the Unravel-Een pill and colossal rhinoceros blood some time ago? Out of all the kingdoms nearby, we are the closest branch who possesses both items. Thus, I was ordered to deliver the medicine. Apothecary Hong nodded. I know about this matter. Didn't they say that you were going to the lowest-tiered Tianxian kingdom? Why would the person from before, a 2-star apothecary, felt baffled and asked once again. Going to the lowest-tiered kingdom and meeting an expert? Inducing a huge improvement in his pill forging skills. I did go to that lowest-tiered kingdom, and during my journey, I found out that the person who purchased the 2 objects is a 1-star apothecary who passed the examination through the pill debate. Apothecary Hong replied. Passed the examination through the pill debate? The crowd's eyes narrowed into thin slits. In a small and weak country like Tianxian Kingdom, not many people knew what the pill debate was. However, in the powerful and large Tianwu Kingdom, virtually every apothecary knew about it. This examination is several times harder than forging a grade 1 pill. One has to have a profound knowledge of pill forging in order to pass. Even in the thousands of years of history of Tianwu Kingdom, there wasn't anyone who passed the pill debate with success. How fearsome would someone who became an apothecary through the pill debate be? Indeed. After hearing that news, I was infuriated. I thought that Tianxian Kingdom Apothecary Guild didn't know the rules and was interpreting it as they please. However, when I arrived and looked at the record crystal they left behind, I realized that I was wrong. Recalling the situation that day, Apothecary Hong was still daunted. If Zhang Xian were to see him, he would surely be able to recognize this Apothecary Hong whom Jiang Chen said he would introduce him to. He was Apothecary Hong Yun who made a wager with him in Tianxian Kingdom and eventually gave him the Unravel-Een pill and Colossus rhinoceros blood for free. Back then, he was still a 2-star apothecary. In the single month after they parted, he managed to pass the 3-star examination and was successfully promoted. Can it be that the person who passed the 1-star apothecary examination through pill debate is him? Realizing the meaning behind Apothecary Hong's words, another 2-star apothecary exclaimed. That's right, it's him. Apothecary Hong Yun smiled bitterly. After we met, the pointer he offered gave me enlightenment, allowing me to forge a grade 3 pill and advance to become a 3-star apothecary. Everyone stared at the young man who emerged with fearful, narrowed eyes. He became an apothecary through pill debate, allowed a 2-star apothecary to forge a grade 3 pill through his guidance, and achieved 130 points in the supporting occupation pavilion. How can he possess such profound pill forging knowledge when he isn't even 20? Someone couldn't help but mutter. No matter how talented a person is, there is a limit to what he can learn in a fixed period of time. It was hard to believe that he could possess such profound knowledge considering his age. I was also puzzled at first, so I found someone to specially investigate this matter. It turns out that he has an extremely incredible teacher called Yang Xian, and he is a master teacher whose rank is likely to exceed 3-star. A master teacher whose rank exceeds 3-star. The crowd's breathing hastened. Just like any other jobs, the highest rank that a master teacher can attain is 9-star, and every 3 stars signify a different league. Even conferred kingdoms might not necessarily have master teachers above 3-star. With such a powerful background, it is no wonder why the other party can be so incredible at such a young age. Members of the crowd were still whispering among themselves when Zhang Xian walked up to Wu Shi. Zhang Xian was able to identify numerous mistakes in the puppet's pill forging at a single glance, but due to the limitation of time, he knew that he wouldn't be able to point out all of them. Even so, when the cauldron was opened and upon seeing the pill, he knew that he would pass for sure. The pill was round and smooth, and a unique pattern had formed on the surface of the pill. It was a pill that surpassed the level of perfection, an inscribed pill. It would truly be unbelievable if he were failed after producing such a pill. He thought that managing to forge such a pill would award him with 70 or 80 points, but never in his dreams did he expect to attain 130. He was also shocked by the score he saw on the door. This is it malfunctioning? Zhang Xian uttered. Hearing those words, Wu Shi's body swayed as he explained, it's because you found the flaws in the pill forging of a 4-star apothecary. Is this the level of a 4-star apothecary? Zhang Xian blinked his eyes, and a look of disdain appeared on his face. Isn't that too weak? Members of the crowd vomited blood. It's not the 4-star apothecary who is weak, you are the one who is too formidable. All right, it was no wonder why Zhang Xian thought that way. This time, he didn't resort to the Library of Heaven's Path, relying on solely his own judgment for the test. After taking in the knowledge of all of the books in Tianxian Kingdom's Apothecary Guild for his own, his understanding of forging grade 1 pills had reached a different realm. If he were to instruct another person on forging grade 2 pills without using the Library of Heaven's Path, he might turn out inferior to some 2-star apothecaries. However, for grade 1 pills, putting aside a 4-star apothecary, even a 6-star apothecary might not be able to match up to him. This was just like Heaven's Path divine art. It was currently limited at merely half-zongshi, but in terms of the most basic of foundations, even the most valuable cultivation technique in the world might not be able to create pure zhenqi like his. Which means, even if a 5-star or 6-star master teacher were to explain the cultivation method for half-zongshi and below, they might not be able to point out the essence as precisely as he could. Let's begin the 3rd test, Puppet Hall, then. Knowing that he would only get increasingly frustrated speaking to this monster, Wu Shi ushered him toward the 3rd door. Zhang Xian nodded. There's no scoring system for Puppet Hall. Upon entering, you will meet a red puppet and a blue puppet of similar cultivations. You have to offer pointers to the red puppet to help it defeat the blue one. Once you do so, you will have passed this test. Wu Shi explained the rules. All right. It was the same as Ling Xiaoxiao explained to him. Without too much hesitation, Zhang Xian pushed the door open and walked in. In the room was a circular dueling ring which was about 20 meters wide. Two puppets were in the dueling ring, one dressed in a blue and another dressed in a red. Upon seeing him enter, the two puppets began their battle. Peng peng peng. The duo crossed blows and the shock waves from their fists caused gusts of wind to billow around them. Tongxian Realm Pinnacle. Zhang Xian was full of astonishment. To think that the two are able to exert the strength of Tongxian Realm Pinnacle cultivators. Furthermore, their movements are nimble and profound, such that even an ordinary Tongxian Realm Pinnacle cultivator might not be a match for them. In Tianxian Kingdom, a Tongxian Realm Pinnacle cultivator is already regarded as among strongest, on par with its royal elder. Yet, to think that they would not compare to even a puppet here. As expected of the Master-Teacher Pavilion. This test is indeed difficult. No wonder people say that it is uphill to pass the Master-Teacher examination if one does not reach Tongxian Realm Pinnacle. Seems like this is the reason why. Zhang Xian was awed. If a person's strength does not even match the two puppets, it would be difficult for him to see through their flaws in order to offer wise guidance. If so, how can one pass the examination? Let's begin. Even so, Zhang Xian was already in the midst of the test. Thus, he swiftly focused his attention on the battling puppets. He had already achieved half-zongshi, and even without the Library of Heaven's Path, he was capable of clearly identifying flaws in those who had not reached his level of cultivation. It was because his cultivation was a perfect version, and anyone who possessed a different cultivation had to be wrong. It was child's play for him to identify any flaws. It didn't take long before he memorized every flaw that the two puppets had. Who? The battle stopped. Just like what happened in the supporting occupation pavilion before, a voice sounded, prompting him to guide the red puppet to victory. The red puppet's movements are forceful and savage, whereas the blue puppet's movements are lithe and nimble. Both of them have their own strengths, making it difficult for one to triumph over the other. Since that's the case, I'll point out the flaws in them both sides in a way that grants the red an advantage over the blue. Very quickly, Zhang Xian had formulated a plan. He simulated it once in his mind, and it was only after confirming that it was feasible that he heaved a sigh of relief. Hoo. Not long after he finished thinking, the puppets began fighting once more. Red puppet, retreat 3 cun, twist your body to the right by half a body, and strike with your fist. Seeing the both sides engaged in a battle once more, Zhang Xian began issuing instructions. Do you think that he'll be able to pass this test? Even though his skills as an apothecary are remarkable, the same might not apply to his ability to impart knowledge relating to cultivation. Looks like you are still unaware. Apothecary Hongyi said just now that this Zhang Xian is a student under a master teacher whose rank exceeds 3-star. The student of a master teacher whose rank exceeds 3-star. Then he will certainly pass the examination. Indeed, master teachers are adept at guiding others in cultivating. As the student of a master teacher, his ability to guide another person in cultivating is most likely to be far superior to his ability to guide another on pill forging. It would be hilarious if he couldn't pass this test. Even though there isn't a score for this test, many people compare the results among candidates through the amount of time they take and the number of moves required to pass. Standing before the door of the third test, Wu Shi stroked his beard. The other master teachers nodded as well. In guiding a specific person to defeat the other when they are of the same cultivation realm, using 3 minutes and 10 seconds are two very different concepts. Similarly, after receiving the guidance, whether the person used 100 blows or a single blow to defeat the enemy were also two very different concepts. I remember that Mo Shi's guidance back then allowed the red puppet to defeat the blue puppet in less than 20 blows, and that went on to become a legend in the Master Teacher Pavilion. Wu Shi glanced at Mo Hongyi in admiration. It's 17. Mo Hongyi nodded confidently. Indeed, it's 17 blows. To be able to get one of the two equally powerful puppets to triumph over the other in so little blows, Mo Shi's understanding of cultivation must have reached an extremely high level. After complimenting the latter, Wu Shi turned to the door once more. Just that, I wonder how many blows would this Zhang Xian take? I am curious as well. A gleam flashed across Mo Hongyi's eyes. The other party has already broken several of his records, so he was interested to see how formidable this fellow who came from Tianxian Kingdom would be. Can his guidance on cultivation be as incredible as the other skills he had just displayed? Given how he is under 20, I'll accept that he is phenomenal at pill forging, but I don't believe that he can be so incredible at cultivation as well. With eyes fixated on the door, Zhang harumphed. He had grown up in a clan of master-teacher, and under his father's guidance, he rarely stumbled in his cultivation. At the same time, this gave him a deep insight into cultivation. Even then, he had to take a full 25 blows before managing to pass this examination. He didn't believe that this fellow could fare any better than him. The first demonstration should take around 300 breaths, and 10 breaths after that, the test will officially begin. Based on the assumption that one blow is made in a single breath, we can roughly calculate how many blows he used. Even though he didn't think that the other party could match his record, Zhang felt nervous nonetheless. This fellow had exceeded all of the expectations that he had of him previously. Before this, if someone were to tell him that a person has achieved a trust level of 85 after casually teaching his students for a few days, he would definitely spit on the other party's face. If someone said that an examinee achieved a score of 130 in the supporting occupation pavilion, he would definitely have torn the person's mouth. But now all of these which he had deemed impossible before was happening with this fellow. Even though he was hostile to him due to MOU, he had to admit that this fellow did possess exceptional abilities. 312, 313, 314, he counted the time, tapping his right forefinger on his left arm. As more time passed, his eyes grew brighter and brighter. 333, 334, 335. Eventually, when he reached 335 breath, the duration which Zhang took to pass the test, the other party had yet to come out from the room. Only then did Zhang heave a sigh of relief, and a delighted look appeared on his face. Ha, looks like his ability to give guidance on cultivation is lacking. With a cold harumph, his eyebrows shot up haughtily. He thought that the other party would be able to surprise him just like he did with the previous two tests. In the end, it had already exceeded 335 breaths, but he was still inside the room. This meant that under his guidance the red puppet wasn't able to defeat the blue puppet within 25 blows. Even if the other party were to come out now, his result would be considered inferior to his. While Zhang Chen's eyes lit up, Wu Shi and Mo Hongyi glanced at one another and shook their heads. Looks like he is still slightly lacking in imparting knowledge on cultivation. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. While he might be skilled in pill forging, his ability to instruct on cultivation is lacking. However, Mo Hongyi's head tilted upward and, with an intimidating brilliance, said, he has abandoned his fundamentals. There's nothing to fear about such a person. You are taking the master-teacher examination, and the main responsibility that a master-teacher has is to provide guidance on cultivation so that his students can grow stronger. So what if you are skilled in pill forging? There are many other skilled apothecaries who have devoted their lives to pill forging. There's no reason for them to look for you. What use is a teacher if he is skilled in flying an airplane instead of teaching? He had forgotten the core responsibility of his occupation. In the previous two tests, this fellow achieved such overwhelming results that Mo Hongyi thought that he would become his greatest rival from this day on. However, from the looks of it now, he had simply been thinking too much. If he is mediocre at guiding cultivation, then he is nothing to fear as a master teacher. Indeed, it's such a pity. Understanding this as well, a look of regret appeared on Wu Shi's face. The other party had performed exceedingly well in previous two tests, so Wu Shi thought that he would do the same for the third test too. But looking at how things turned out, he had pinned too many expectations on the other party. How can there be a person in the world who is skilled at all occupations? He is already a formidable apothecary. Isn't it too much to expect him to be as knowledgeable in cultivation? Everyone's thoughts continued to wander as another 10 breaths passed. Jia. At this moment, the door finally opened, and only Zhang Xian's head could be seen popping out from behind. A total of 352 breaths. That means that the two puppets have crossed a total of 42 blows, Jiang Chen sneered coldly. Just as he was about to commence his mockery, the young man scratched his head in embarrassment. That during my guidance, the red puppet exerted too much force and bashed the blue puppet's head off. I tried to fix it but to no avail. May I ask that it's not a fail, right? Bashed the head off. Regardless of the resilience of their physical structure or strength, they are of the same level. At the very most, it should only be possible for one side to subdue the other. To bash the other puppet's head off, what in the world happened? The crowd fell to the floor in shock. For a moment, the entire examination hall became silent. Despite being so ignorant, you are able to fare so well in the examination, you monster. Where in the world did you pop out from? She felt an extremely stifling sensation in her chest. If not for her holding herself back, she would have long spurted blood all over the room. About this I shouldn't need to pay, right? After explaining himself, everyone in the room fell dead silent. Zhang Xian nervously pointed to the puppet on the floor. The puppet hall possesses the ability of self-recovery. After a few days of rest, the puppet will become as good as new. Snapping back to reality from his shock, Wu Shi nodded. That's good. Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Then is this considered as a pass? Of course. Wu Shi smiled bitterly. The others rolled their eyes as well. With your guidance, the red puppet wrecked the blue puppet with a single move. If you do not pass, who else can? The next test is Cultivation Technique Ocean. Holding back his dismal, Wu Shi started to explain the content of the next examination. The Cultivation Technique Ocean possesses countless cultivation techniques, and a book is chosen at random and one has to conduct a lecture on its contents. During the lecture, one will not only be judged by numerous master teachers, but by the Whilom Sage Bell as well. The Whilom Sage Bell is a spiritual treasure which has the comprehension that past sages had over cultivation techniques, imprinted within. If the examinee is unable to satisfy its requirements, it will not chime, and he will be considered to have failed. The more chimes there are, the more accurate and precise one's lecture is indicated to be. Zhang Xian nodded his head. All right, you may enter now. Master teachers, please follow me in. As for the others, I will have to request you to remain outside. Surveying the surroundings, Wu Shi said. The fourth test, Cultivation Technique Ocean, requires master teachers to be present to serve as examiners. Outsiders do not possess the qualifications to participate in the test. Yes. Everyone answered simultaneously. Pushing the door open, Zhang Xian walked into the room. The Cultivation Technique Ocean was similar to an ordinary classroom, and the primary objective of the test was to assess a master teacher's ability to conduct lessons. No matter how incredible a master teacher is and how good his pointers are, if he is inept at lecturing, he would only serve a good private tutor, and would not be considered a good teacher. An excellent teacher should have students all over the world, and every student under his tutelage should be an expert. It isn't anything impressive to produce just one or two good students. Surveying the interior of the room, there were 2 rows of large, magnificent bells hung on the 2 sides of the room. Every single one of these bells was around the height of a human, and there were unique and profound inscriptions on them. There were tables and chairs in the center, and they were arranged neatly like in an ordinary classroom. More than 10 master teachers entered and took their seats. At this moment, they were just students, and there was only one teacher, Zhang Xian. Once the crowd sat down, the doors closed and the room became quiet immediately. Who? The lecture table trembled for a moment and a book slowly appeared. This is the secret manual taken at random from the library. You have an incense stick's worth of time to read through it before conducting a lesson. The Whilom Sage Bell will analyze the content of your lecture, and we will make our own judgment as well. The final verdict of whether you pass or not will be based on both the input from us and the Wylam Sage Bell. Upon seeing the book appear, Wushi explained. The Wylam Sage Bell was left behind by a 4-star master teacher, and contained within was his understanding toward cultivation techniques, battle techniques, as well as their merits and demerits. As long as the content of one's lesson was aligned with the concepts infused within it, one would gain the recognition of the Wylam Sage Bell. On the other hand, if one's lecture turned out to be full of mistakes, the bell wouldn't chime. Even though it sounded complicated, it was actually similar to the Supporting Occupation Pavilion test. In the Supporting Occupation Pavilion, the accuracy of the examinee's guidance was reflected in their score, whereas over here, it was reflected through the chiming of bells. After hearing Wu Shi's explanation, Zhang Xian stretched out his hand and picked up the book before him. Undulating Water Ripple Palm. Numerous eyes fell on the cover of the book. It was a battle technique. Undulating Water Ripple Palm. Seems like his luck isn't good. This is one of the most profound battle techniques in the Master Teacher Pavilion used for the purpose of this test. That's right. The more profound the technique is, the more difficult it is to decipher and explain. In the several millennia that the kingdom's Master Teacher Pavilion has been established, there were 8 examinees who had managed to pick this book, and out of them, 7 left disappointed. The remaining one had also managed to only touch on the surface of the battle technique and barely passed. Even if he were to pass this test by luck, it is unlikely that his results would be as good as those before. Upon seeing the name on the book, the master teachers seated below shook their heads, and looks of pity flashed across their faces. The cultivation technique ocean picked cultivation techniques and battle techniques at random, so luck played a part as well. If one is lucky, he would manage to pick an easy book or a technique that he has seen before. If so, it would be much easier to explain and decipher. However, if one were to pick a difficult technique which he finds hard to even practice, how can he possibly give a lecture about it? It was apparent that this Zhang Xian's luck wasn't too good. This undulating water ripple palm might not be the toughest battle technique to learn in the entire Master Teacher Pavilion, but it wasn't too far from it. Innumerable cultivators had tried learning it and they put in great effort, only to end in failure. It was nigh impossible to obtain a sufficient understanding of the entire technique in just an instance's time. Oblivious to the thoughts in the crowd below, Zhang Xian flipped open the book casually, browsed through it briefly, and nodded his head. Even though this secret art seemed to be profound, it was nonetheless within the scope of a Tongxian realm cultivation. Having cultivated the Heaven's Path spear art, Heaven's Path movement art, and such, he had gained a deep understanding of battle techniques. As long as it was within his level, no matter how profound or difficult it was, he would be able to see through the intentions the creator had in mind when creating the technique and from there, identify the correct cultivation method. Having been trained by the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xian's eyes became extraordinarily sharp. Many times, even without resorting to the Library of Heaven's Path, he was able to discern a thing or two in a person's cultivation technique and enlighten them. It was just like after coming into contact with a genuine money note, even if one hadn't seen a fake money note, with a single touch, one would still able to discern whether it was real. Heaven's Path divine art and the various battle techniques born from the Library of Heaven's Path stood at the very pinnacle of cultivation. Standing right at the peak, it was extremely easy for Zhang Xian to look down and pinpoint the problems in other techniques. Alright, I'll start my lecture. Several dozen of breaths later, Zhang Xian was done browsing through the secret manual and he placed it on the table casually. Zhang Laoshi, there's no need for you to rush. You have an instant's time to analyze it carefully. Seeing that Zhang Xian was about to start the lecture after browsing through the book once, Wu Shi couldn't help but advise him. There's no need for it. Zhang Xian shook his head. It was instead a waste of time for him to browse through such a simple battle technique once more. Scanning the crowd, Zhang Xian couldn't be bothered to dawdle any longer and began immediately. Undulating water ripple palm may sound like a water attribute palm technique, and many perceive the technique as such when practicing it. However, this is wrong. Wrong? The crowd was taken aback. Zhang Xian continued, actually, what the name, undulating water ripple palm, means is that after mastering the technique, one's attack will be just like ripples, striking one after another ceaselessly. This technique has nothing to do with the water attribute. Zhang Xian offhandedly raised the common problems that a cultivator would face with the technique, as well as the correct training method. To think that this would be the case, I didn't expect it at all, so that's the case. I am enlightened. His explanations left everyone flushed and trembling in agitation. Those present were all master teachers, and naturally, they possessed the capability to deduce whether his explanations were correct or erroneous. Initially, all of them assumed that this palm technique was a water attribute technique. Never in their dreams did they expect themselves to be so sorely mistaken. After analyzing the technique from another angle, the incredibly technique from before seemed to be just like a beautiful lady who was fully stripped, demystified. There is indeed a great difference between us. After hearing the explanation, Mou glanced at the young man on the stage with a complex gaze. She had seen this undulating water ripple palm before, and her understanding of the technique was no different from what the others believed. She never thought that the technique could also be interpreted in such a manner. After hearing the other party's explanation, she felt that her understanding of battle techniques had been too shallow. Incredible! Hongyi clenched his fists tightly. Even though he didn't want to admit it, he felt that the other party's explanation was flawless. This person will probably be my greatest rival. Narrowing his eyes, a strong fighting spirit had been ignited within Hongyi. As an unparalleled genius in Tianwu Kingdom, he had never met any equals. To have met a person who was tied with him, or had even surpassed him, had ignited his fighting spirit. Looks like it's time for me to take the 2-star Master Teacher examination. Exhaling fully, Hongyi harumphed coldly. In actual fact, given his cultivation, he could have taken the 2-star Master Teacher examination. However, he chose to delay it so that he could improve himself and break all of the records in the Master Teacher Pavilion in a single go. However, after seeing Zhang Xian's outstanding performance, he felt that if he didn't pick up his pace, he might soon be overtaken by the other party. Every master teacher present had their own thoughts, but one thing they had in common was that they felt impressed by the young man before them. On the other hand, the crowd outside was anxious to know the results. I wonder how his results would be. Ling Xiaoxiao's eyes were fixated on the 4th door. If she could, she would have dived right in at this very instant. The result of the cultivation technique ocean is closely tied with the chiming of the Wylam sage bell. A single chime means a pass, 2 chimes means good, 3 chimes means excellent, 4 chimes means outstanding, 5 chimes means that there are no flaws in the person's comprehension of the technique, and 6 chimes mean a perfect score. The Zhongshe guard behind her said. Chapter 309, Harmonious Chiming of the 100 Bells. How is it happening so quickly? It hasn't even been half an incense stick's time since he entered, right? And he has started on the lecture and already finished it? What in the world did he lecture about? Upon hearing the chime, everyone in the crowd trembled. After the cultivation technique ocean passes a secret manual to the examinee is given an incense stick's time to browse through it before having to conduct the lecture. It had only been a total of half an incense stick's time since the very first examination began, but the Wylam sage bell has already chimed. Does he not need to read the secret manual before beginning to teach? Furthermore, to complete the lecture so quickly. It is only after one finishes his lecture will the Wylam sage bell express its recognition or lack of through its chimes. If it were anyone else, even if he were to earn the recognition of the Wylam sage bell, it would take at least 3 to 4 incenses time before it chimed. There was even a case where an examinee lectured for half a day before it chimed. For it to start chiming after just half an incense stick's time, putting aside whether they had ever seen this, they have never even heard of such an occurrence. Given how short his lecture is, his content must be lacking. I think a single chime must be the limit. The elder behind Ling Xiaoxiao shook his head in pity. Haste makes waste, this saying applies to everything in life. Even if he is capable and can understand the technique swiftly, but to start lecturing right after glancing through the book is just too rash. In such a hurry, it is likely that he has missed out some parts. After all, no matter how simple a technique appears to be, it is the crystallization of our predecessors' wisdom. The slightest mistake can result in a cultivation going amok and cause irreversible damage. In this world, it wasn't rare for a cultivator's cultivation to go berserk. Most of the time, it was due to their erroneous understanding of a technique that resulted in a divergence in their cultivation. It was one thing for Zhang Xian to be unable to comprehend the technique completely, and it was another for his lecture to be short. It was highly likely that he missed out many important points given how brief his lecture was. Most master-teacher examinees would treat this test as a written examination. They would spew all of the knowledge they knew of and pray that one of the words that they spoke would turn out to be correct. For the lecture to end so swiftly meant that the lecture was lacking in content. Even if the whilom sage bell chimed, it was unlikely to chime more than once. Indeed. It seems that he's still too young and impatient, Apothecary Hongyi nodded. Zhang Xian Laoshi could be considered his benefactor, and naturally, he hoped that the other party would fare well. He hadn't expected him to be so reckless. With this, it was likely that he wouldn't obtain any stellar result. Even though it is a pity, he should at least learn from this incident. When he finally takes the 2-star master-teacher examination, he probably won't be so reckless anymore, the elder nodded. He was still lamenting when the ground trembled once more, and a resounding chime sounded once again. Dang! 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 It was 3 consecutive chimes. The ground could be seen trembling. 4 chimes. Outstanding. Is his result on part with Mo Hongyi Mo sure? The elder and Apothecary Hongyi glanced at each other, and they nearly vomited blood. They had just said that the other party was too reckless and that his results would surely be poor, yet in the next moment, the bell chimed another 3 times. They felt a stinging pain on their faces as if someone had set them alight. 4 chimes, that should be the limit, right? After 4 chimes, the entire hall fell silent, and only then did the elder heave a sigh of relief. Looking at the door with a meaningful gaze, he was just about to continue speaking when another deafening chime assaulted his ears. Dang! The bell sounded once more. 5 chimes, flawless comprehension, it's a new record. Everyone became dumbfounded. Since the establishment of the kingdom's master-teacher pavilion several thousand years ago, the best result achieved that was ever achieved was Mo Hongyi's 4 chimes, yet, in just half an incense stick's time, this Zhang Xian induced 5 chimes from the whilom sage bell. At this moment, he had become the new record holder. Genius! He is truly a genius. He is able to understand the technique right after picking the secret manual, allowing the bell to chime 5 times. Flawless comprehension, I'm impressed, but before the elder could finish his words, the ground shook once more. It was yet another chime. The heck? Are you done yet? The elder was on the verge of tears. Every single time he thought that the other party had reached his limits, the bell would chime. You must be doing it on purpose. In other people's cases, the bell would chime in a consecutive fashion only after they finished their lectures. There weren't such long intervals between any chimes. Yet, why is it that when it came to you, the bell chimed so irregularly? Are you trying to scare us out of our wits? 6 chimes, perfection. At this instant, everyone's face turned pale, and as if they were stone statues, they stood unmoving for a very long time. Vice Pavilion Master Guan, where is the Pavilion Master? Send someone to get him now. In a room located in the depths of the master-teacher pavilion, an elder rushed in with big strides. The pavilion master returned last night and is currently cultivating in seclusion. He gave the instruction that no one is to interrupt him if it isn't anything pressing. Vice Pavilion Master Guan Zichuan glanced at the elder doubtfully. Elder Zhu, what in the world could have happened for you to become so flustered? Come, tell me about it. If it is something important, I'll look for the pavilion master right now. Cultivating in seclusion. Elder Zhu frowned. Then after hesitating for a moment, he started speaking. It's someone taking the one-star examination. Taking the one-star examination? Vice Pavilion Master Guan chuckled before shaking his head. Isn't Wu Quan there? He should be more than capable of conducting the examination. There is no need to trouble the Pavilion Master over such a small matter. Don't you know that the Pavilion Master sustained internal injuries and has to rest? I know that it isn't worth alarming the Pavilion Master over a one-star Master-Teacher examination, but if you know what results the examinee has actually achieved and the ruckus it is causing, you won't be saying such words. Elder Zhu shook his head. Oh. Did it manage to create a commotion? Can he be a genius of Hongyi's caliber? Vice Pavilion Master Guan was taken aback. Hongyi. Elder Zhu shook his head. I went to take a look only after hearing the Wylam Sage Bell, so I don't know his result for the first 3 tests. All I know is that when I arrived, the Wylam Sage Bell was chiming ceaselessly. Do you mean to say that it chimed more than 4 times? Vice Pavilion Master Guan's eyebrows shot up. More than that, Elder Zhu smiled bitterly. If it is more than 4 chimes, does it mean that his result has reached 5 chimes? That is flawless comprehension. It means that there is 0 mistake in his lecture. Pavilion Master Guan could no longer maintain his composure by this point. With a grim face, he stood up. Infused within the Wylam Sage Bell is the knowledge of a 4-star Master Teacher. If he achieved 5 chimes, that means that the person's lecture has gained their absolute acknowledgement. Are you sure that the person taking the test is undergoing the 1-star Master Teacher examination? The one taking the test is undergoing the 1-star Master Teacher examination. Elder Zhu nodded. Furthermore, the chimes didn't just stop at 5. It wasn't that Elder Zhu was reluctant to speak or that he was trying to keep the other party hanging, but that even until now, he was still unable to accept what he had just seen. Didn't just stop at 5, Vice Pavilion Master Guan's hands shook in agitation, and through his quivering lips, spoke. Can it be 6 chimes? 6 chimes represent perfection, and it means that the person's understanding of the technique is no different from that of a 4-star Master Teacher. Before he could finish his words, Elder Zhu exclaimed in a frenzied voice, it's 7 chimes. Put on. Vice Pavilion Master Guan's knee caved in and he fell back onto his seat. At this point, his face had turned completely pale. 7 chimes, approval of the sages? How is this possible? Most people knew that 6 chimes represented perfection, but very few knew that there was another level above it. In such a situation, it means that the examinee has gained the approval of the Wylam Sage Bell. In other words, he has gained the approval of a 4-star Master Teacher, and that he can be considered as an equal in terms of his understanding of the technique. A fellow taking the 1-star Master Teacher examination has gained approval from the spiritual will left behind by the 4-star Master Teacher, such that it regarded him worthy as a peer. Guan Zichuan felt the blood draining from his face, and at this moment, his mind had gone into a turmoil. After innumerable years as the Vice Pavilion Master of the Master Teacher Pavilion, he had seen plenty of geniuses. However, he has never even heard of such a monster. 7 chimes. Shouldn't we invite the Pavilion Master? Elder Zhu wasn't surprised by Vice Pavilion Master Guan's reaction. Anyone who heard of this news would probably act in the manner he did. This, of course, we should. However, I want to take a look personally to first ascertain the matter. Suppressing his shock, Vice Pavilion Master Guan exhaled deeply and flung his sleeves. All right, let's go. Elder Zhu nodded his head, and just as they walked out from the room, dang! A resounding chime echoed throughout the entire Master Teacher Pavilion. Previously, the chime resounded only within the examination hall, but this chime seemed to have caused the entire Tianwu royal city to rattle for a moment. The tremor was extremely violent and it felt as if the Wylam Sage Bell was trying to break free from the shackles of the Master Teacher Pavilion and open a path to heaven. Under the powerful tremors, both Vice Pavilion Master Guan and Elder Zhu fell to the ground simultaneously. Their faces had turned pale and they spoke in disbelief. Is this harmonious chiming of the 100 bells admiration of the sages? What in the world is going on? Admiration of the sages? What does that mean? Why haven't I heard of it? All of the bells chimed at once, and the deafening sound seemed as if it would rip apart the air. Ling Xiaoxiao turned to the elder behind her and yelled. She had heard of 1 chime, 2 chimes, 3 chimes all the way to 6 chimes, but she had never heard of 7 chimes. Not to mention, harmonious chiming of the 100 bells at this moment, she felt a splitting headache. She couldn't understand what was going on. Harmonious chiming of the 100 bells, admiration of the sages, means that even if a 4-star master teacher were present, he would listen to the lecture obediently and quietly. In other words, Zhang Xian's explanation of the technique has already exceeded the level of a 4-star, reaching the level of a 5-star master teacher, or even higher. The elder trembled. What? Exceeded the level of a 4-star master teacher? Ling Xiaoxiao's face paled. That ignorant fellow's understanding of cultivation and battle techniques surpasses that of a 4-star. How is that possible? Her body shuddered slightly, and she felt as if she was about to go insane. That's right. However, at this point, the elder hesitated for a moment. Doubt could be seen within his fearful eyes. However, what? Apothecary Hongyi has been standing beside the duo, and he had heard their conversation. Perplexed by the elder's words, Apothecary Hongyi asked. However, under normal circumstances, the harmonious chiming of the 100 bells should at least last for a tea's time as a celebration. However, why would it only chime for just a short moment before coming to an abrupt end? A tea's time. That's right. The elder nodded. Seems like we will only know the answer after the master teachers come out. In the room where the cultivation technique ocean test was conducted, every single 1-star master teacher who was here as an examiner was in a trance. The explanation of undulating water ripple palm by the young man before them was too thorough. If they were to cultivate according to the way he explained, it wouldn't take long before all of them master the skill. Truly, it was at the level where everyone becomes an expert. Dang 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 dang. Everyone was listening to his lesson attentively as if they were in a trance when the bells by the side, upon hearing such profound theories, chimed excitedly, and their resounding peals penetrated straight into the heavens. Shut up, are you done yet? When you chimed for the first time, the second time, and the third time, I did not make a fuss. And you have now climbed over my head, chiming together in such disorder. I'm not yet done with my lecture. Why the heck are you chiming? With his eyebrows knitted into a frown, Zhang Xian bellowed. Woo! The chiming of the many large bells silenced abruptly. Chapter 310, This is Bad. The Wylam Sage Bell was forged personally by 4-star master teachers, and their will were infused within it. The entire Master Teacher Pavilion, including the Pavilion Master, treated the bell as if it were their ancestral tablet. Yet, a lad who was taking the 1-star Master Teacher examination lashed out at it without hesitation. Furthermore, with such fury and annoyance the hell. At this moment, Wu Shi and the others even had thoughts of dying. Upon receiving the harmonious chiming of the 100 bells, submission of the sages, they would definitely become so excited that they would even forget their own names. On the contrary, this fellow thought that it was too noisy, and berated angrily as if he were scolding his own grandson. Frick, 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 frick. Can you be any more arrogant and brazen than that? This isn't the most shocking part. The most shocking part of the entire affair is that the chiming of bell actually stopped after he bellowed at it. In other words, the will of the 4-star master teacher infused within the bell has submitted to him. The heck. This is no longer admiration, but submission. The faces of the master teachers turned green, and they would have pulled off their own heads right on the spot. As master teachers, they were all worldly veterans, but such situation nonetheless sent them into an uncontrollable frenzy. Especially so for Jiang Chen. He had always viewed the other party with hostility. Upon witnessing this sight, he nearly dived underground in fright. Where did this monster come from? To bellow at the will left behind 4-star master teachers and frighten them to the point that they don't dare to chime any further the heck. Even his father wasn't as savage as that. I won't lose to you. Hongyi's body had stiffened. After a long while, he revealed a ferocious expression. Ever since he started cultivating, he had been walking around with the halo of a genius. Regardless of occupation, cultivation technique, or battle technique, as long as he put his mind to it, he had always emerged to be the number one. It was the same for the Master Teacher examination. He broke every single record in the Master Teacher Pavilion, and his name resounded throughout 13 countries. But now all of his records were getting broken one after another by the person right before his eyes. A strong sense of humiliation sent him into a frenzy. I will go out now and take the 2-star Master Teacher examination, Hongyi said with a determined gaze. He could long have taken the 2-star Master Teacher examination, but in order to break more records, he had been holding back his attempt. However, after seeing Zhang Xian hot on his heels, he no longer dared to rest. You might be formidable, but your soul depth is only 5. 1. There's still a long way before you can take the 2-star Master Teacher examination. By the time you are eligible, I would have widened the distance between us once more. Hongyi's confidence rocketed once more. The other party achieved astounding results in the House of Trust, the supporting occupation pavilion, the puppet hall, and the cultivation technique ocean, but so what? The soul depth is the basis of a master teacher, and Zhang Xian only has 5. 1. To take the 2-star master teacher examination, one's soul depth has to be at least 6. 0. He wasn't eligible to take the 2-star master teacher examination. He might be a genius in the other aspects, but for soul depth, the only way is for him to progress bit by bit, step by step. When he passes the 2-star master teacher examination, he will be able to retain his title as the number 1 genius. No one will be able to take it away from him. Seeing the bells fall silent after berating at them, Zhang Xian finally heaved a sigh of relief. Say, is there something wrong with these bells? Just a single chime or two to express its recognition would have done, but for all of them to ring at once, and to ring non-stop at that I have already given you much face. Bastard! If not for the fact that you're a public property that belongs to the Master Teacher Pavilion, I would have disassembled you into pieces. After lecturing for another short while, Zhang Xian then paused and lifted his head to look at Wu Shi. Me like this, is it considered as a pass yet? If I haven't passed the test, I'll continue. He was merely halfway through deciphering the battle technique, but he recalled Ling Xiao and Wu Shi's words, saying that it would be a pass as long as the bell chimes. Since the bell had chimed time and time again, he should have already passed the examination. You have passed. Swallowing his saliva, Wu Shi nodded. He has already caused a harmonious chiming of the 100 bells, admiration of the sages. If you didn't give him a pass, the pavilion master would probably beat him to death the moment he stepped out from the room. Good. Upon hearing that he had passed this test, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Since I have passed, let's move on to the next test, after which, he walked out of the room. In the examination hall. According to the records, the harmonious chiming of the 100 bells should last for a tea's time. Why would it stop after chiming after just a few breaths? At this moment, Vice Pavilion Master Guan and Elder Zhu had already arrived at the examination hall, and they were staring at the 4th door with a perplexed expression. Can it be that the examinee was extremely lucky, and he picked an easy battle technique or cultivation technique which he had read about, and that's why he managed to achieve the harmonious chiming of the 100 bells, admiration of the sages? However, as it isn't his original understanding and theory, the chiming lasted for only a short moment before ending abruptly. Other people would die just to have the bell chime a few times for them, yet this fellow thought that it was too noisy. Alright, since there's no problem, let's continue with the 5th test. I would also hope for another genius to emerge from our Master Teacher Pavilion. Upon confirming that there was nothing wrong with the test in the cultivation technique ocean, Vice Pavilion Master Guan forcibly suppressed his astonishment and gave instruction. It was an honor for him, as the Vice Pavilion Master, to have a genius emerge from the Master-Teacher Pavilion. Yes. Wu Shi nodded. Then after scanning his surrounding, he jerked all of a sudden. Where is Zhang Xian Laoshi? He was right before him a moment ago. How did he suddenly disappear in the blink of an eye? He has already entered the unerring pavilion. A person in the crowd said. After Zhang Xian came out, he saw Wu Shi rush straight toward two elders. Since he had to take the fifth test sooner or later, he decided to enter the fifth room right away. In any case, the first four tests were just as how Ling Xiaoxiao has put them out to be, so he thought the fifth one shouldn't be too different as well. He entered. Wu Shi was taken aback. Seeing the tightly shut door of the fifth room, Wu Shi was just about to say something when a thought appeared in his mind. His eyes narrowed, and his face paled. This is bad, what's wrong? Isn't he supposed to take the fifth test anyway? There shouldn't be any problem, right? Seeing the other party's face turn pale, Vice Pavilion Master Guan frowned. He was supposed to enter anyway, why are you making such a big fuss? He is supposed to take the fifth test. Wu Shi panicked, and a sliver of fear flashed across his eyes, but I haven't told him about the rules of the unerring pavilion, and the things he should take note of. He was about to explain the fifth test to Zhang Xian when the Vice Pavilion Master called for him. By the time he had realized it, the other party had already gone through the fifth door. He hadn't gotten a chance to explain anything. Meaning to say the other party entered the unerring pavilion knowing nothing. It shouldn't be a problem even if you didn't explain the fifth test to him beforehand. Which of the examinee who came for the master-teacher examination wasn't aware of the 5 tests? Don't worry about it, he would surely have made preparations for the tests in advance. Vice Pavilion Master Guan initially thought that it was some grave matter, but after hearing Wu Shi's words, he waved his hands casually. Which of those who came to take the master-teacher examination didn't know about the 5 tests? Since they knew, they would surely have looked into the tests beforehand so that they can prepare for them in advance. This way, they wouldn't panic and err during the tests. Made preparations? I would also like for him to have made preparations. Recalling Zhang Xian's performance in the previous few tests, Wu Shi nearly burst out crying. If that was the case, he wouldn't have to panic. But no matter how he looked at it, this fellow seemed to be an ignorant newbie. If he were to know that the harmonious chiming of the 100 bells was the highest compliment, how could he possibly have berated the whilom sage bell? If he had known the tricks for the House of Trust, how could he possibly have brought students of his age over? If he had known that the puppet hall has the ability of self-regeneration, how could he possibly have tried to fix the puppet inside despite having passed the test? He probably doesn't know anything. The 5 tests of the master teacher are something that I just told him about when I met him yesterday. He didn't even know the location of our master teacher pavilion. Hearing the conversation between the two, Ling Xiaoxiao couldn't help but speak up. In an instant, the entire crowd in the examination hall turned to look at her. Vice Pavilion Master Guan, Elder Zhu, and the others seemed to recognize her, and they didn't get mad at her abrupt interjection. Ling Xiaoxiao recounted the details of her meetings with Zhang Xian yesterday and today. He came for the master-teacher examination not having known about the tests, but he achieved such outstanding results nonetheless. After hearing her words, everyone flew into another frenzy. They thought that this fellow must have been extremely familiar with the tests and had made sufficient preparations beforehand in order to achieve such results. Yet the other party doesn't even know the rules, simply strutting into the rooms for the tests. To have achieved such results so easily, how formidable is he? Hongyi's body swayed violently, and he felt an urge to vomit blood. He had spent countless hours preparing for the 1-star master-teacher examination before he could achieve his results. Yet, he was unable to match up to the other party, who simply came without possessing the slightest idea. If that was the case, why did he waste his time on those preparations? If he knows nothing at all, then he surely doesn't know that the unerring pavilion has 2 stages. After hearing Ling Xiaoxiao recount, Vice Pavilion Master Guan's face darkened as well, and his body trembled in agitation. That's right. Furthermore, the two stages are just side by side. Upon recalling the matter, the others narrowed their eyes as well. What do you mean by two stages? Unable to understand the anxiety on the others' faces, Apothecary Hong asked doubtfully. On the surface, the unerring pavilion consists of a puppet displaying cultivation technique and battle technique, similar to that of the puppet hall, but the two are actually completely different. In the puppet hall, the two puppets fight one another, and what one is tested on is his ability to guide another. On the other hand, in the unerring pavilion not only is one tested on his ability to discern the flaws in a puppet, one is also examined on his cultivation. That means to say in the unerring pavilion, one has to fight with the puppet. Within an incense's time, one has to find flaws and use it against the puppet to defeat it. If the examinee is unable to find them, the puppet will not stop its attacks, and it might even kill him. Kill him? Most of the apprentices here weren't aware that the unerring pavilion was that fearsome, and they were startled. But those who take the master-teacher examination would have to undergo this test, so there shouldn't be any great danger. Apothecary Hong Yun could not help but ask. So many people have taken the master-teacher examination, but he hadn't heard of anyone getting killed during the test. Since those who came before him were fine, he should be the same as well. Others might be alright, but he is different. Wu Shi's mouth twitched. There's a total of 2 stages to Tianwu Kingdom's unerring pavilion. The first stage is for the 1-star master-teacher examination, while the second stage is for the 2-star master-teacher examination. If it were anyone else, they will definitely come out after completing the first stage. However, as I didn't explain, it is highly likely that he doesn't know. If he were to enter into the second stage, what he will be facing is a Zhongshe realm puppet. Zhongshe realm puppet? Everyone was shocked. Those who take the 1-star master-teacher examination usually possess a Tongxian realm cultivation, so the puppet they had to face was Tongxian realm as well, in order to make it possible for them to defeat it. However, if they were to face a Zhongshe realm puppet, especially a Zhongshe realm puppet with nearly no flaws, this is no different from courting death. The crowd's faces turned pale. This is a situation of absolute death. Tongxian realm and Zhongshe realm were 2 completely different levels. Hurry up and stop him, Vice Pavilion Master Guan shouted. It wasn't easy for a genius to appear in their guild. If he were to fall due to his ignorance about the rules, the entire branch would be in deep trouble. Wang! Before he could finish his words, the door of the 5th test, unerring pavilion, quivered, and a brilliant light shone from it. He. Seeing the color of the light, Wu Shi's body trembled, and his vision turned gray. It's too late. He didn't go for the first stage, he went straight for the second stage. Chapter 311, 30 Flaws. The air was still with silence. The worst had really happened. The first stage and the second stage of the unerring pavilion were just beside one another. Under normal circumstances, before an examinee entered, Wu Shi would inform them in advance on how they should trigger the first stage. Even if he didn't inform, as long as one was a master-teacher apprentice in the Tianwu Kingdom, one should know the rules. Thus, no mishaps had ever happened. Yet, this fellow just had to be the exception. Furthermore, despite knowing nothing at all, he simply barged in. It was one thing for him to barge him, but for him to disregard the first stage and head for the second one straight, wasn't his luck way too bad? Can't we enter now to save him? Apothecary Hong Yun inquired anxiously. Once the unerring pavilion is activated, it will not stop until there is a conclusion. Wu Shi's face paled. Then, after a moment of hesitation, he added, unless the pavilion master personally makes a trip down and uses the pavilion master token to forcefully enter. Alright. I will look for the pavilion master now. Let's hope he can last until then. Vice Pavilion Master Guan nodded before turning around to leave. Zhang Xian was a genius who has broken all of the records of the previous tests. If he were to fall here because of their mistake, the entire branch would have to suffer the wrath of the headquarters. Surviving until the pavilion master arrives, is that possible? Wu Shi's face paled. A Tongxian realm would be destroyed in mere seconds before a Zhongshi realm expert. How can he possibly last until the pavilion master arrives? At this point, we can only hope for the best, knowing that there was no other way. Wu Shi gazed at the door before him, praying from his heart for the young man's safety. In the room of the fifth test, Zhang Xian stared intently at the puppet before him. Ling Xiaoxiao was right. The first 4 tests did not differ much from what Wu Shi said, so he thought that the 5th test would be the same as well. Seeing that the others were preoccupied with talking, he had pushed the door open and walked in alone. However, upon entry, he was immediately hit with the realization that something was amiss. A puppet had pounced at him the moment he stepped inside. Despite that, Zhang Xian immediately crushed it on the spot, crippling it completely. Then, a second puppet came rushing over at him as well, and it was clearly much stronger than the first one. If not for Zhang Xian's swiftness, he would have been injured by now. A Zhongshi realm primary stage puppet? As expected of the final test, it is indeed much more challenging than the previous tests. As the strength of the puppet dawned upon him, Zhang Xian's eyes narrowed. In the third test, the 2 puppets who exchanged blows were only of Tongxian realm cultivation, whereas this fellow was at Zhongshi realm primary stage. No wonder so many people were unable to pass the master-teacher examination. They would surely be helpless before such a powerful enemy. However, this means nothing to me. A Zhongshi realm puppet might be powerful, but it meant nothing to Zhang Xian. After reaching half Zhongshi, his strength had increased to 1500 ding. In terms of strength, he was already above that of a Zhongshi realm primary stage cultivator. Furthermore, when his overwhelming strength was coupled with unparalleled battle techniques like Heaven's Path movement art, Heaven's Path fist art, as well as the eyes of discernment to detect others' flaws, even a Zhongshi realm advanced stage would find it difficult to get the better of him. Needless to say, this puppet. Who? As Zhang Xian immersed in his thoughts, the puppet before him had already rushed up to him. Focusing his attention on the puppet, he immediately spotted 7 to 8 flaws on it. With a ghost of a smile, he retreated a step backward, then using his finger as a sword, he aimed and stabbed at a specific point in the air. Pang! Although little power was invested in this move, the massive body of the puppet fell backward involuntarily as though it had suffered a heavy blow. Continue. Successfully striking the other party, Zhang Xian leaped, dashed forward, and pummeled the puppet's flaws one blow after another without any hesitation. Since this was called the unerring pavilion, this meant that one should strike at the weaknesses of the puppet. The more one struck the puppet's weaknesses, the higher one's results should be. Previously, the first puppet had dashed over too suddenly and Zhang Xian had sent it flying with a single slap before he could react. In comparison, this second puppet was significantly stronger, and it would serve as a good sparring partner. Peng 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 peng. Fists, kicks, elbows, smashes, all kinds of attacks landed on the puppet's body, causing it to retreat continuously. Ever since his transcension, Zhang Xian had not let loose and fight before. At this moment, unleashing all his strength, he could feel the Jinqi in his body gushing through his entire body, and an unspeakable sensation of pleasure assaulted him. Pipa! Pipa! As the flow of pure Jinqi coursed faster and faster through his meridians, a few bottlenecks which he had struggled with in his usual training was suddenly broken through. I actually broke through the final hurdle of Zhongshi realm. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. He didn't expect that this series of offense would allow him to break through the hurdles that kept him away from Zhongshi realm. This effectively left him on the verge of achieving a breakthrough to the Zhongshi realm. Advancing to the Zhongshi realm meant going up a level of existence. There would be a visible qualitative change in one, be it one's longevity or stamina. Despite the fact that Zhang Xian could already sense himself nearing the attainment of the Zhongshi realm previously, he knew that without several months of gruel training, it would be difficult for him to finally take the last step. Little did he know that this single battle would serve as the impetus for this breakthrough. This is a good opportunity. I should use this fellow to train for a bit longer first. I'm in no hurry to advance to the Zhongshe realm anyway. Even though he was delighted at the unexpected gain, he wasn't in a hurry to achieve a breakthrough. Once he breaks through to the Zhongshe realm, beating up this fellow would be as easy as crushing an ant. There would be no meaning behind it. Rather, in his current state, he could refine his battle abilities as well as the ability to exploit the enemy's flaws. Pavilion Master Hall, he's not here. Conference room, he's not here. Where could the Pavilion Master be? Knowing that the genius was still trapped in the unerring pavilion, Vice Pavilion Master Guan rushed through the entire Master-Teacher Pavilion without the slightest moment of rest. With the cultivation of a Zhongshe realm pinnacle, his movement was as swift as a whirlwind. Soon, he had looked through all the places where the Pavilion Master often visited, but there wasn't a single sign of him. He knew that the Pavilion Master had gone into seclusion to cultivate, but he didn't think that he wouldn't be at the Master-Teacher Pavilion. The backyard. Having searched through almost everywhere in the Master-Teacher Pavilion, all that was left was the backyard. At the back of the Master-Teacher Pavilion was a gigantic residence, and it was split into numerous courtyards. There were numerous Master-Teachers who lived here, and the Pavilion Master was one of them. Moving swiftly, it only took him the span of 6 to 7 breaths to reach the Pavilion Master's courtyard. Just as he was about to enter, he heard the roar of a savage beast. Why is there a savage beast here? Vice Pavilion Master Guan was shocked by the abrupt sound. This is the Master-Teacher Pavilion, not the Beast Hall. Where did the savage beast come from? Could the Pavilion Master be in danger? Overwhelmed by worry, the various formalities which included reporting his arrival deserted Vice Pavilion Master Guan as he barged in. Pavilion Master, yelling, he drove his cultivation, prepared to make a move. However, as his eyes fell on the scene in the courtyard, he was immediately stunned. The Pavilion Master was in the courtyard, and a savage beast was present as well. But unlike what he thought, they weren't battling at all. Rather, the former was grilling meat to feed the latter. A gigantic savage beast was currently eating delightfully, and its pleasure was explicitly shown on its face. Guan Shi, to come over in such a hurry, did something happen? Seeing how the other party barged in without reporting, the Pavilion Master frowned. Pavilion Master, something bad had happened. A genius was in the midst of the Master-Teacher examination when he accidentally entered the unerring pavilion. Vice Pavilion Master Guan knew that it wasn't the time to be asking him about anything else, so he quickly summarized the situation. You mean to say that he unwittingly triggered the puppet of the second stage? Hearing those words, the Pavilion Master became anxious as well. How foolish. Let's go. Knowing that there wasn't any time to be wasted, the Pavilion Master couldn't be bothered about the savage beast now. He swiftly dashed out of the courtyard. The two Zhongshe realm pinnacle experts possessed exceptional speed. Like a whirlwind, they arrived at the examination hall in the span of just 10 breaths. Expecting anxious faces upon entering the examination hall, what greeted them was eyes widened in shock instead. The crowd stared blankly ahead, as though they had lost their souls. What's going on? The Pavilion Master asked in confusion. Such an incredible genius has entered the unerring pavilion and triggered the second stage, shouldn't the crowd be anxiously anticipating his arrival to save him? Why wasn't anybody worried at all? Why did it seem as though they had all turned dumb? Pavilion Master Lo look. Perplexed, Vice Pavilion Master Guan looked around when he suddenly saw something, and he pointed to something before him. What he was pointing at was the door of the 5th test. A line of digits was shining glaringly. 465. What is this? The Pavilion Master shuddered, and he nearly keeled over on the spot. This should be the score from the flaws he found. Vice Pavilion Master Guan swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The score from finding flaws. The Pavilion Master's face darkened, and for a moment, he could feel blood welling up at the back of his throat. Didn't you say that this fellow was in danger and that he was about to be killed? Didn't you say that he was stuck in the unerring pavilion and that he needs to be saved? What in the world is wrong with that score? In the unerring pavilion, the first mistake found awards 1 with 1 point, the second mistake found awards 1 with 2 points, the third mistake found awards 1 with 3 points, so on and so forth. If a genius was able to find 6 flaws and score 21 points, that would already be a groundbreaking feat, a record that would last for at least a century. Yet 465? The heck? 465, which means to say he has found 30 flaws of the puppet. Shuddering, the pavilion master's face twitched uncontrollably. At this moment, he felt that the world has gone mad. The movements displayed by the puppet in the unerring pavilion were vetted by 4-star master teachers. In other words, their blows were no different from a 4-star master teacher suppressing his cultivation. Even if the 4-star master teacher unintentionally overlooked some flaws, there should only be at most 1 or 2, needless to mention, it wouldn't be easily detectable. Yet, this fellow 30 mistakes, 465 points. Was the puppet created by your family? Are you sure that he triggered the second stage, not the first stage? The corner of the lips of the pavilion master twitched for a long while before he forced himself to calm down and ask. A 1-star master teacher unintentionally barged into the second stage and found 30 flaws in the Zhongshe realm puppet. Even a 2-star master teacher examinee wouldn't be capable of such a feat. If it was the first stage, the door should shine blue, and if it was the second stage, it should shine red. When the test was triggered, I personally verified that it shone red. There is no mistake about it. Vice Pavilion Master Guan was dumbfounded as well. He had anxiously pulled the pavilion master here for him to save a genius from losing his life. In the end, the other party was actually having fun inside. Moreover, hadn't it only been a while? Yet, he had already found 30 flaws in the puppet. Vice Pavilion Master Guan staggered. Even if they were to gather all the master teachers in the master teacher pavilion in there, they wouldn't be able to find that many flaws. After all, this was a puppet left behind by a 4-star master teacher. Unless one's eye of discernment was above that of the other party, it was impossible to find so many flaws. Jia. Just as the two of them were in a frenzy, the door opened and a young man walked out. Upon seeing him walk out, Wu Shi immediately rushed up to him. Zhang Shi, are you all right? The other party had already passed the 5 tests, so he could officially be considered a master teacher now. Thus, he changed his address for the other party from Zhang Laoshi to Zhang Shi. Why wouldn't I be all right? Zhang Xian stared at him with a confused expression. Then, his face slowly turned red and he said sheepishly, however, I failed to control my strength and accidentally destroyed the puppet. It should be capable of self-regeneration too, right? Chapter 312, 2-star master teacher examination, destroyed the puppet? A dark line appeared on Wu Shi's head. That was a Zhongshe realm puppet. Yet, you, a 1-star master teacher examinee, not only found 30 flaws on it but even destroyed it. If the 4-star master teacher who made the puppet were to learn of it, he would definitely spurt blood and faint on the spot. This is way too much. Since you triggered the second stage, I thought that you would meet with danger. That's why I asked you if you are all right. Holding back his dismal, Wu Shi explained. Second stage. The unerring pavilion has stages? Zhang Xian stared at him doubtfully. He had started fighting with the puppets from the very first moment he entered, yet he didn't notice any stages inside. Upon hearing his words and seeing his confused expression, all of the master teachers staggered. If not for their strong self-control, there would have been a blood rain in the room. You only met with 1 puppet? You didn't see anything else? Jiang Chen couldn't resist asking. Puppet? Oh, I met with 2. A puppet rushed at me as soon as I entered, but I accidentally used too much force in my slap. It is currently lying over there, and I think that it is destroyed as well. Could that be considered as one of the stages? Zhang Xian recalled. The moment he entered the unerring pavilion, a puppet immediately rushed at him. Catching him off guard, he reflexively slapped it with his full force. Little did he expect to cripple it with just a single blow. Soon after, the second puppet appeared. As he was too engrossed in the battle, he had forgotten about this matter. Could it be the fellow who was destroyed in a single slap was considered as the first stage? If that was the case, then wasn't the first stage too easy? Destroyed in a single slap. That is the test that you have to undergo for your 1-star master teacher examination. Everyone was thrown into a frenzy. Jiang could only see the vision before him darkening. Back then, when he took the master teacher examination, he had to expend all his effort just to match this puppet, and he even nearly lost his life to it. Yet, this fellow to send it flying unintentionally. Must there be that much of a difference between our situations? More importantly, that was the test you were supposed to take. To think that you would continue on ignorantly despite having sent it flying, do you have to be so boastful? Forget it. Wu Shi was also speechless. Brother, are you here to take the master teacher examination, or are you here to wreak havoc? It seemed that you had already destroyed nearly all of the puppets in our master teacher pavilion. Since you have passed all the 5 tests, you can now be officially considered to be a master teacher. However, you still have to pass the question symposium before the emblem can be presented to you. Taking a few deep breaths, Wu Shi forcefully suppressed his dismal and announced. All right. Zhang nodded. He had originally thought that the master teacher examination would be difficult, but to think that it would be so easy. Given that he was already a 1-star master teacher, he could finally enter the library of the master teacher pavilion to browse through their books. At the same time, he could look into the history of Kong Shi to look for the way to dispel the innate fetal poison in his body. Just as he was about to inquire directions to the library, he saw Hongyi approaching him with astonishing confidence and haughtiness. Wu Shi and Elder Zhu, I want to take the 2-star master teacher examination. Please open up the examination grounds for me. Seeing this fellow breaking all of his records, Hongyi could no longer hold himself back. He decided to go through with the examinations immediately. Only upon becoming a 2-star master teacher would he be willing to let today's matter rest. Otherwise, whenever others speak of him, they would also bring up this fellow who broke all of his records. In that case, how would he still have the face to go out and meet others? As the number 1 genius of the kingdom, he couldn't accept the fact that he was beneath anyone. Take the 2-star master teacher examination. Shi only become a master teacher a few years ago, right? He is taking the 2-star examination now. As expected of a genius. His cultivation speed isn't something ordinary people like us can match up to. The crowd trembled. It had been years since someone took the 2-star master teacher examination. To think that he would want to take the examination at this junction. Even though they were taken aback by his timing, a number of people with a discerning eye easily saw through his intentions. Hongyi's intention was to pit himself against Zhang and prove to everyone that he was the true number 1 genius in the kingdom. All right. Elder Zhu and Wu Shi hesitated for a moment before nodding their heads. The master teacher pavilion encouraged competition. Only with competition would one be motivated to work harder to improve oneself. On top of that, Hongyi taking the 2-star master teacher examination served as good news to the branch as well. I will make the preparations now. You should be able to take the test by today. Elder Zhu said. Just as he was about to head off to make preparations, a faint voice resounded. That since it is possible to take the 2-star master teacher examination today, and it is troublesome to prepare it on 2 separate occasions, why don't I take it today as well? Zhang peered over. Since it was possible to take the 2-star master teacher examination today, Zhang decided not to waste his time and simply go through with it at one go. Pooh! Upon hearing those words, everyone in the vicinity spurted blood. The bustling examination hall abruptly fell silent, and everyone stared at Zhang as though he was a monster. Troublesome to prepare it on 2 occasions, take it today as well, the heck. This is the 2-star master teacher examination. In the entire kingdom, there are only 3 2-star master teachers to take it. For convenience sake you speak as though you are buying vegetables from a wet market. You want to buy vegetables? I'll buy it for you then, since it is convenient for me. The hell? Can you be any more ridiculous than that? Hongyi's body staggered. After witnessing the other party trample over all of his records, he finally made up his mind to take the 2-star master teacher examination. Yet, the other party said that he wanted to take the examination as well. A strong stifling sensation rose in his chest and left him on the verge of puking blood. Are you intentionally doing this to embarrass me? Fine. Since you are so adamant on going against me, don't blame me for getting nasty. Harumphing coldly, he gritted his teeth and glanced at Zhang. Given the results of the past 5 tests, you do have the capability to take the 2-star master teacher examination. However, there are prerequisites for the examination. Have you fulfilled all those prerequisites? He hated to admit it, but it was clear that the fellow had the capability to become a 2-star master teacher. But just possessing capability was insufficient. There were conditions one had to meet to take the 2-star master teacher examination. If one didn't meet these conditions, one wouldn't be eligible to take the examination. Oh. Zhang glanced over. Just like for the 1-star master teacher examination, there is a requirement on one's supporting occupation to become a 2-star master teacher. One must have at least 2 supporting occupations, and each of them must reach the 2-star tier. Hongyi smiled confidently. Despite my inability, I managed to become a 2-star apothecary, 2-star formation master, and 2-star blacksmith, so I meet the requirement. Do you meet this requirement? At which, he placed his hands behind his back and turned to Zhang. Given that you're only a 1-star apothecary, I doubt that you are qualified to take the 2-star master teacher examination. The supporting occupation has to reach the 2-star tier. And there must be 2 of them. Zhang was taken aback. He didn't think that there would be such a rule. Lu Shi seemed to have mentioned something like this before, but he wasn't too clear on the matter, and Zhang wasn't too concerned about it at that time. That's right. If you don't have the supporting occupations, I will have to ask you to leave. Since he had already opened fire, there was no need for him to put on an amiable front. Harumphing coldly, he was just about to continue speaking when the young man before him suddenly flicked his wrist after a brief moment of hesitation. An emblem promptly appeared in his palm. This is the emblem of a 2-star painter. I have already passed the 3-star examination, but they said that they don't have it with them at the moment and it would take 10 days for it to arrive. Thus, they gave me a 2-star emblem to make do with it. To think that I would have a use for it. 2-star painter. Will that do? The crowd spurted blood once more. Hongyi's face warped as well. He just said that the other party was only a 1-star apothecary, and didn't have the qualifications to take the examination when the other party took out a 2-star emblem. Did the slap have to be so quick and so hard? I need 2 supporting occupations, right? Here is another one. Flicking his wrist once more, another emblem appeared. It was the 2-star Beast Tamer emblem which he obtained at the Beast Hall back then. The 2 2-star emblems glimmered brightly in Zhang eyes. He really has 2 2-star supporting occupations? 2-star painter and 2-star Beast Tamer, not to mention his fearsome pill forging skills. It will be tough for Mo Shi from now on. Seeing that Zhang was able to produce the required emblems right after Hongyi challenged him on his lack of supporting occupations, everyone's focus instantly shifted onto the number 1 genius. They wanted to see what he had to say about this matter. Sensing everyone's gaze on him, Hongyi's face twisted. However, he had already come this far and it was impossible for him to back down now. Clenching his teeth, he pushed on. Even though you have sufficient supporting occupation, you need to reach the Zhongshe realm before you can take the 2-star master teacher examination. Given your current strength, you aren't qualified yet. Just like how one needed to be at Tongxian realm to take the 1-star master teacher examination, there was also a requirement for the 2-star master teacher examination as well. If one failed to attain the Zhongshe realm, he would be ineligible to take the 2-star examination. Hearing those words, everyone immediately turned to Zhang Xian. Due to the purity of the heaven's path Shinqi, if Zhang Xian does not propel his cultivation, no one would be able to tell his true strength. However, the fact that he was able to defeat the Zhongshe realm puppet in the unerring pavilion made everyone curious about his current strength. Zhongshe realm, it's true that I have yet to reach that level. I am only at half Zhongshe. Upon hearing of the cultivation requirement for the 2-star master teacher examination, Zhang Xian hesitated for a moment before displaying the full might of his cultivation. Half Zhongshe. Even though half Zhongshe is extremely close to Zhongshe realm, it isn't Zhongshe realm, indeed. From the looks of it, he probably won't be able to take the 2-star master teacher examination. Still, to be able to find 30 errors on a Zhongshe realm puppet and defeat it with the cultivation of a half Zhongshe, his ability is indeed frightening. Upon seeing that Zhang Xian's cultivation was only at half Zhongshe, the crowd shook their heads. The criteria regarding supporting occupation and cultivation were fixed prerequisites that one had to meet to take the 2-star master teacher examination. If one failed to reach that level, they would be ineligible to take the examination. These were the hard rules determined by the headquarters that no one could change. Half Zhongshe may seem as though it was just a step away from Zhongshe realm, but there was a huge distance between the two. If one was lucky, one might be able to achieve a breakthrough within 1 or 2 years, but on the other hand, it was also possible for one to remain in this realm for their entire life. Putting everything aside, if Lu Shi and the others didn't meet with Yang Shi, it was highly possible that they might have remained at half Zhongshe for the rest of their lives. The conditions for the 2-star master teacher examination were harsh. Just the fact that there were 15 1-star master teachers in the Tianwu kingdom but only 3 2-star master teachers showed how difficult it was to become a 2-star master teacher. You aren't eligible to take the examination since you aren't at Zhongshe realm yet. I advise you to drop the idea. Upon seeing that Zhang Xian's cultivation had yet to reach Zhongshe realm, Mo Hongyi heaved a sigh of relief. Wait a moment. Zhang Xian shook his head upon seeing the other party coming to a conclusion so swiftly. Since the prerequisite for taking the 2-star examination is the attainment of the Zhongshe realm, give me a moment. After which, he shut his eyes. Wait a moment. Mo Hongyi was stunned. Wait for what? Boom. Before he could react, he suddenly felt the other party's aura growing exponentially stronger, as though a bird soaring into the heavens. Opening his eyes once more, Zhang Xian smiled lightly. All right, I've attained the Zhongshe realm. Mo Hongyi staggered. He had him wait a moment, and he just achieved a breakthrough like that. The heck? Could there be anything more ridiculous than this? Understanding the various schools of techniques and gathering their knowledge to form one's own school, that is a Zhongshe. When people closed their eyes and opened it, they were merely dozing off. Yet, after closing your eyes and opening them a few moments later, you claim that you have reached Zhongshe realm. Screw it. Did it have to be so ludicrous? Did you have to be so arrogant? In an instant, Mo Hongyi felt as though thousands of bolts of lightning had struck him, burning him all the way down to his core. At this moment, he even felt like dying. He has reached Zhongshe realm. It's true, the aura around him is clearly that of a Zhongshe realm expert. He achieved a breakthrough just like that. Isn't that too simple? The crowd looked as though someone had stuffed wool into their mouth and their eyes were widened to the point that their eyeballs threatened to fall to the ground. They had seen people who strived hard and eventually reached Zhongshe realm after gaining enlightenment. They had heard of people who went into seclusion for innumerable years and eventually succeeded. But, shutting one's eyes for a moment and achieving a breakthrough. This was their first time seeing and hearing of it. It felt like a joke. This was Zhongshe realm, the first big hurdle of a fighter's cultivation, the gates that shut innumerable people out their entire life. To break through just like that, am I going mad, or was there something wrong with the world? He has already achieved a breakthrough, but we're still unable to find our way. Those master teachers who had been stuck at Halfzongshi for countless years felt a fiery stinging sensation on their cheeks. If they could, they would like to find a hole to hide in. Even if humans were born unequal. You didn't have to make it so apparent. Wasn't the difference too great? On the other hand, Lu Ling's body swayed. It was just yesterday night when he advised the other party to train diligently and accumulate experience, or else it would be impossible for him to achieve a breakthrough. Yet, the other party achieved a breakthrough right before everyone's eyes today, not to mention, he did it just by shutting his eyes for a moment. Senior, could it be that you already had the capability to achieve a breakthrough yesterday, but you intentionally suppressed your cultivation to spare my dignity? If that was the case, you might as well not spare my dignity. The blow from this is much worse, alright. Everyone harbored their own thoughts toward this matter, but one thing they had in common was their shocked gazes. The actions of this youngster had destroyed their understanding of cultivation. Now that I am a Zongshi, I should be eligible for the 2-star master teacher examination, right? Actually, Zhang Xian could have achieved a breakthrough while he was at Unerring Pavilion, but he intentionally suppressed it so that he could train himself against the puppet. All he did just now was to channel his Jinqi for his cultivation to immediately rise to the level of Zongshi realm. Upon reaching Zongshi realm, his disposition became more refined, and his Jinqi became denser and stronger. Without testing, it was impossible to gauge how powerful he was, but based on the energy flowing through his body, it was likely that his strength had increased by 2-folds. The previous 1500 ding of strength had probably already reached 3000 ding. Such strength was comparable to a normal Zongshi realm advanced stage. If he were to meet with the Zongshi realm puppet once more, he would be able to destroy it with a single punch, just like what he did with the first puppet. You have reached Zongshi realm, so you do fulfill the condition. Elder Zhu nodded blankly in response to Zhang Xian's question. The condition for taking the 2-star master teacher examination was to reach Zongshi realm. Since Zhang Xian already reached that level, Mo Hongyi could no longer use it as a reason to stop him. So what if you have reached Zongshi realm? Your soul depth is only 5, 1. As long as you don't reach 6, 0, you aren't eligible. Mo Hongyi clenched his fists tightly. Since he had already offended the other party, he might as well go all the way through. That. There is indeed a condition stating that one's soul depth has to reach at least 6, 0 before one can take the 2-star master teacher examination. Afraid that the other party didn't know of the matter, Elder Zhu explained. That's true, I remember Lu Ling telling me about it. Zhang Xian nodded. Back then, when he was still at Tianxian Kingdom, Lu Ling and the others had raised the subject while they were talking about soul depth. They said that one's soul depth had to reach 3. 0 to take the 1-star master teacher examination, 6. 0 for the 2-star examination, 9. 0 for the 3-star examination, so on and so forth. Zhang Xian's soul depth was only at 5. 1, so he didn't have the right to take the examination. Even though I am incapable, my soul depth has reached 6, 0, reaching the minimum requirement for the 2-star master teacher examination. Finally triumphing over the other party on one aspect, Mo Hongyi heaved a sigh of relief. With a flick of his wrist, a stone of insight appeared in his hands. After a few moments, the number 6. 0 appeared on it. His soul depth has really reached 6, 0. Fearsome. Soul depth is the foundation of a master teacher, and if one's soul depth is unable to keep up, it is useless no matter how high one's cultivation is. That's true. It seems like Zhang Shi's miracles will stop here. This is already a miracle in itself. Look at how old he isn't even in his 20s yet. To possess a soul depth of 5, 1 at his age, it is just a matter of time before he reaches 6, 0. Upon confirming that Mo Hongyi's soul depth had reached 6, 0, everyone burst into an uproar. At the same time, they felt pity for Zhang Xian. He could take the tests for the supporting occupations beforehand, and he could achieve a breakthrough in his cultivation on the spot, but it was impossible for him to raise his soul depth all of the sudden. There was no way around it. Alright, since you don't meet the prerequisite, you should wait by the side. I have an examination to take now. After displaying his soul depth, Hongyi placed his hands behind his back while displaying a haughty expression and calmly added. It is indeed a point for concern that my soul depth has not reached 6.0, but, don't be in such a hurry, give me a moment. After a moment of hesitation, Zhang said. Give you another moment? Hearing those words, Hongyi staggered. He was on the verge of going insane. Is he for real? Different to the case of one's cultivation, soul depth could only be raised slowly with time. I don't believe that a moment is sufficient for your soul depth to reach 6.0. He glanced at the young man with unfriendly eyes, and this time, the young man didn't shut his eyes. Instead, he surveyed the surroundings, as though looking for someone. Raising one's soul depth was an extremely difficult and lengthy process. It required one to put in hard work every day, year after year. It was impossible for Zhang to wait that long. Since Elder Zhu was already going to prepare for the examination, it would be best for him to take it along with Hongyi. Otherwise, he would have to make another trip here, and that would be troublesome. Thus, he thought of a way, the Golden Book. This book of Heaven's path could easily raise one's soul depth, sparing one the trouble and time of doing so. Initially, he intended to visit Tianwu Academy to accept a few students and induce their gratitude towards him. However, now that Zhao Ye and the others were here, he could simply call them over and find a way to form the golden page. Just as he was surveying the area for Zhao Ye and the others, he suddenly froze. A familiar figure caught his eyes. It was the master teacher he met in the mountains last night, Jiang Shu. He is also my student, and I have already won his gratitude and trust by helping him tame the Crimson Tiger. If I were to help him solve the hidden traumas in his body now, the golden page may just form. Such a thought flashed across Zhang Xian's mind. With a slight smile, he walked up and beckoned, Jiang Shu, come here for a moment. Initially, Elder Zhu, Hongyi, and the others were filled with curiosity about what Zhang Xian was up to after asking them to wait for a moment. However, when they heard his words, all of them staggered, and blood nearly spurted from their mouths. Jiang Shu. That is the pavilion master of our master teacher pavilion. As a 2-star pinnacle master teacher, everyone here has to address him respectfully as Jiang Shi. Yet, you called him straight by his name. Is there something wrong with you? Not only was the crowd astonished, Pavilion Master Zhang was taken aback as well. He had no idea why the other party was calling for him. Perplexed, he was just about to walk over when Jiang Chen stepped in front of him. Zhang Xian, what are you up to? My father is a 2-star pinnacle master teacher, the pavilion master of the master teacher pavilion. Who are you to order him about? This Jiang Chen is the son of Pavilion Master Zhang. He is your father. Zhang Xian was taken aback. He didn't expect this situation at all. However, thinking about it, everything made sense. As a 2-star pinnacle master teacher and a Zhongshe realm pinnacle cultivator, even the emperor of Tianwu Kingdom had to treat Pavilion Master Zhang with the utmost respect. It was no wonder why, even though Mou clearly detested Jiang Chen, she didn't dare to do anything about him. It was because Jiang Chen had a powerful background. That's right. Jiang Chen tilted his head upward proudly. As a 1-star master teacher, he possessed an esteemed standing in Tianwu Kingdom. Furthermore, despite the fact that he wasn't much as compared to those who stand at the top echelon, because of his background, no one in the kingdom dared to disregard him. Even the royal family held him in high regard. He was extremely proud to have such a father. Yet, this hateful fellow was actually commanding his father to come over. Naturally, he was displeased. You should go to the side first, I have something to talk to your father about. Although Zhang Xian was surprised that Jiang Shu was the pavilion master of the master-teacher pavilion, and Jiang Shu was Jiang Chen's son, he was quick to recover his composure. The book compiled on Jiang Shu in the Library of Heaven's Path only stated that he was a 2-star master teacher, it didn't mention that he was the pavilion master of the master-teacher pavilion. Even so, there were only 3 2-star master teachers in the entire kingdom. He had already met with Elder Zhu and Vice Pavilion Master Guan, so naturally, Jiang Shu had to be the pavilion master. Zhang Xian thought that he was lucky for the student he casually accepted to be the pavilion master of the master-teacher pavilion. Seeing the other party disregard him, Jiang Chen's face paled. Just as he was about to continue speaking, he was pulled to one side. "All right, you should step aside for now." Jiang Shu walked up to Zhang Xian and faced him. At this point, he was sure he had never met the young man before him. Yet, the other party addressed him by his name. He couldn't help but feel slightly peculiar about the matter. "May I know the reason why Zhang Shi called me here?" In spite of his slight displeasure towards Zhang Xian's rudeness, he upheld his etiquette. "Did you acknowledge a master teacher named Yang Xian as your teacher yesterday?" Zhang Xian asked. "How did you know?" Jiang Shu's body jolted. He didn't tell anyone about the events that happened last night. Yet, the young man knew of the matter. This shocked him. Pavilion Master Jiang has acknowledged someone as his teacher. To become Pavilion Master Jiang's teacher, doesn't that mean that the person's ability is above that of a 2-star pinnacle master teacher? He is probably a 3-star master teacher. When did such a formidable figure appear in Tianwu Kingdom? Hearing the pavilion master admit to it, a commotion immediately broke out among the crowd. Pavilion Master Jiang was the most skilled master teacher in Tianwu Kingdom, yet he had acknowledged someone else as his teacher. How skilled must that Yang Xian be for Pavilion Master Jiang to submit to him? Its teacher. Its grand teacher. Hearing Zhang Xian's words, the eyes of Lu Ling, Zhao Ye, and the others glowed. "You are," after recovering from his shock, Jiang Shu asked carefully. Since he didn't tell anyone about this matter, then it was likely that the news got leaked by his teacher. Could the person before him be related to his teacher? "I am Yang Xian, Yang Shi's direct disciple. Following the customs, you should call me senior." Chapter 314, Soul Depth of Zero. Father Senior. Jiang Qin spurted blood. "Are you for real? When did father acknowledge someone as his teacher? Furthermore, you are his senior. If that's true, then what am I? Your junior nephew." Jiang Chen's face distorted in agitation. Frustration clawed at him as he teetered on the edge of losing his mind. The others quickly turned their attention to the pavilion master, as though trying to spot any signs of him joking. "You are Yang Shi's direct disciple." Ignoring the gazes from the surroundings, Pavilion Master Jiang took a moment to let this information sink in before he came to a realization. "It is no wonder you are so formidable despite your age. So you are teacher's student." He would never believe it easily if someone were to appear and claim that to be his senior. However, if the other party wasn't Yang Shi's student, how could he have known that he had become Yang Shi's student? And how could he possess such astonishing capability? To be able to cause such a huge commotion just by taking an examination, he would never believe that Zhang Xian didn't have a formidable teacher behind him. He just met Yang Shi yesterday, and Zhang Xian appeared today. Considering the coincidence in timing, he judged that it was unlikely for the matter to be a lie. "Indeed. Teacher said that you have met with some trouble while cultivating and that had left traumas on you. He had entrusted me with a cultivation technique and said that as long as you cultivate accordingly, your traumas will be resolved. In fact, reaching Half-Shizuan will not be a problem at all." Zhang Xian sent a telepathic message to Pavilion Master Jiang. "What?" Pavilion Master Jiang's face flushed. Yesterday, when Yang Shi pointed out his problem, Jiang Shu thought that he would have to do several things for the other party before he would treat his affliction. He didn't expect the other party to send Zhang Shi to relay the solution to him. Listen carefully. After seeing what affliction Jiang Shu was suffering from through the Library of Heaven's Path, he flipped through numerous books and finally found a solution to his problem. Since he wanted to obtain the gratitude of the other party to form the golden page, there was no reason for him to hesitate in telling him the solution. Thus, he imparted the complete method without holding anything back. Soon, he finished relaying the entire cultivation technique. As a 2-star pinnacle master teacher, before Pavilion Master Zhang heard the entire cultivation technique, he could already tell that it would be effective on his affliction. After hearing the complete formula, he trembled in excitement. He could foresee that if he were to cultivate according to the other party's formula, not only would his trauma be treated, his cultivation would also progress swiftly. Reaching the level of his dreams was no longer an impossible feat. Pavilion Zhang's knees caved in, and he kneeled onto the floor. Earnestly, he clasped his fist. Thank you, teacher, for the bestowment. Thank you, senior, for imparting this cultivation technique to me. The duo had been communicating through telepathy, so no one knew what the duo was talking about. Just when they were perplexed over what was going on, Pavilion Master Zhang suddenly kneeled on the floor. Everyone was shocked. Pavilion Master Zhang actually kneeled to this lad? He isn't kneeling to this lad, but his teacher, which means to say, Zhang Shi is really his senior. Who in the world is Yang Shi? How strong is he? Who knows? But to be able to get Jiang Shi to willingly acknowledge him as his teacher, he must be at least 3-star, or perhaps even higher. The crowd clenched their fists tightly. The highest-ranking master teacher in Tianwu Kingdom was Pavilion Master Jiang at 2-star pinnacle. Yet, someone who he was willing to acknowledge as a teacher suddenly appeared. Anyone who heard of this would surely find the matter unbelievable. Father, Jiang Chen cried. He thought that the fellow was just bragging and that his father would destroy him. Yet it was real. Furthermore, his father even kneeled in submission. Heavens, you shouldn't play with me like that. At the same time, Zhao Ye and the others flushed in agitation. It was just a while ago that they thought that since their teacher was able to send Physician Bai Chan running in fear and Princess Mou to clasp her fist to him respectfully, it was just a matter of time before the Pavilion Master of the Master Teacher Pavilion greets him. Yet not only did the Pavilion Master greet him, he even kneeled down as expected of their teacher. He was indeed incredible. Just when everyone was dying from shock, Zhang Xian's eyes turned red with excitement. As expected, diligence does not betray one. At the moment of Pavilion Master Zhang's kneeling, Zhang Xian's mind jolted and the golden book appeared. Flipping it open, another golden page was in it. Seemed like his previous conjecture was correct. Only the earnest gratitude from a student could form the golden page. With this, I can finally raise my soul depth. Zhang Xian's lips curled up. Boom! His head jolted, and the golden page immediately burnt into ashes. Immediately, Zhang Xian felt as though his head was filled with something. All of his doubts from before suddenly cleared up, and his flow of thoughts hastened as well. So this is the state of insight. Many confusing issues that he was stuck with previously suddenly seemed clear and orderly to him. Without even checking, Zhang Xian knew that his soul depth must have increased. The greater one's soul depth, the easier it was for one to find and grasp the essence of something. In the past, Zhang Xian required the Library of Heaven's Path to look for flaws. However, along with the increase in his soul depth, he found himself being capable of finding flaws without using the Library of Heaven's Path, and he could even deduce the solution to them as well. My original intention was to use the page to assimilate the contents into my mind. Zhang Xian shook his head. He had recently collected a huge number of books in the Library of Heaven's Path, so he intended to use the golden page to assimilate their contents into his head. Even though he ended using the golden page for his soul depth, it was of no consequence now that he knew of the method to form those golden pages. He could just find a way to form more of those. Calming his mind, Zhang Xian exhaled deeply. Then, he turned to Elder Zhu and smiled, "All right, my soul depth is sufficient now." "Your soul depth is sufficient now? What do you mean?" Mo Hongyi looked over. Even though he wasn't present then, he had heard from the others that Zhang Xian had tested his soul depth and it was at 5.1, thus, he shouldn't be eligible for the 2-star Master Teacher examination. Yet, after speaking to Pavilion Master Zhang for a moment, he turned around and said that his soul depth had reached the requirement. "What do you mean? Surely you don't intend to say that in this short period of time, your soul depth has exceeded 6.0? If it was anyone else who said those words, Mo Hongyi would surely kill the other person on the spot. But this fellow was different. With a maximum score of 100, he was able to achieve a score of 130. Despite accidentally trespassing into the second stage, he was still able to find 30 flaws. Just by shutting his eyes for a moment, he was able to achieve a breakthrough to Zhongshe realm. He wasn't something that common sense was applicable to. You mean to say that your soul depth has reached 6.0? Elder Zhu's mouth twitched as he looked at Zhang Xian doubtfully. "I'm not sure. But I think it should be enough. We can look for a stone of insight to test it now." Zhang Xian nodded. The golden page was capable of raising his soul depth, his previous experience had proved this. However, he couldn't confirm how much it would increase each time. After all, no one could guarantee that the previous increment of 5.0 wasn't an exception. Thus, Zhang Xian didn't dare to phrase it definitely. When he said he wasn't sure, the crowd went speechless again. "You don't know? Should be enough? You don't even know your soul depth? You must be joking." "At my age, I had seen countless monsters and geniuses, but this is my first time seeing such a peculiar and frustrating one. I have one here, take it." Holding back his urge to vomit blood, Elder Zhu took out a stone of insight and offered it to him. Grabbing hold of it, Zhang Xian focused his mind to enter Heart of Tranquil Water. Wang! A light buzz. "Quick, how much is it? It can't be that it has really exceeded 6.0, has it? Who knows? If it is anyone else, I will definitely think he is boasting." But this fellow, everyone's eyes were gathered on Zhang Xian. They wanted to know the result of the test. Even Mo Hongyi's breathing hastened unknowingly. "Who?" Zhang Xian opened his palms expectantly and glanced downward. However, what he saw almost made him throw the stone of insight outward. What is going on? The glowing stone of insight had turned gray and lost its radiance. Moreover, there were no numbers on it. No numbers. Before he used the golden page, even his soul depth of 0.1 was reflected. Yet, nothing was shown on it now, not even a 0. What the heck was going on? Could it be Gedeng? Zhang Xian's heart leaped a beat, and his mouth twitched. Could it be that while the soul depth could increase his soul depth, it could cancel it out as well? The 5.1 which he had painstakingly accumulated has been cancelled out. If that was the case, then it was really darned he had just boasted about the matter. When this happened, would he be beaten to death by everyone here? No numbers. I thought that he would really reach 6.0. Seems like he's just bragging after all. Indeed. How can it be possible for one to reach 6.0 from 5.1 in just an hour? Not only was Zhang Xian stunned, the crowd was confused as well. Didn't you just confidently declare that you had met the requirement for the 2-star examination? Why does your test reflect nothing at all? You sure know how to act. To think that I really believed you, seems like we're just thinking too much into it. Soul depth has to be slowly cultivated, how can it increase on one's whim? Voices sounded from the crowd. The matter of Zhang Xian reaching Zhongshe realm could still be attributed to his solid foundation. However, soul depth was different. The previous test had clearly reflected 5.1, so how could it reach 6.0 all of a sudden? Just the very thought of it was ludicrous. Since there are no numbers, this also means that your soul depth hasn't reached 6.0 yet. As such, you aren't qualified to take the examination. Elder Zhu, there's no need to delay it any longer. Let's begin. Seeing that the other party's soul depth had not reached 6.0, Mo Hongyi heaved a sigh of relief, and slowly, he regained his confidence. Continue acting. You screw it up this time, right? Since your soul depth has not fulfilled the requirement, you aren't eligible to take the examination. You wish to catch up with me? Try harder. Looking at Zhang Xian's stone of insight and noticing the lack of numbers on it, Elder Zhu shook his head. Just as he was about to speak, Pavilion Master Zhang walked over with a grim expression. Hold on for a moment. What's wrong? Elder Zhu was bewildered. It was the first time he had seen such an expression on the Pavilion Master's face. The crowd also turned their gazes over as well. Pavilion Master Zhang didn't reply. Instead, he walked up to Zhang Xian and picked up his stone of insight. The moment his fingers came into contact with the stone of insight, Kacha. A crisp sound and the stone of insight was reduced to powder. This everyone froze. Just like jade, the stone of insight was incomparably resilient. Pavilion Master Zhang didn't even exert any force on his fingers, so why would it break? As I expected, as though having verified something, Pavilion Master Zhang nodded his head, and a bright gleam flashed across his eyes. Pavilion Master, what is going on? Elder Zhu asked. The crowd also looked at him anxiously. As long as one possesses the state of insight, when grabbing the stone of insight while in the state of the heart of tranquil water, numbers should appear on it. All of you had personally witnessed Zhang Shi's soul depth reaching 5.1, so don't you all think that it's weird that there's no result at all this time? Pavilion Master Zhang asked. The crowd nodded. This was indeed the case. As long as one possessed the state of insight, there should be numbers reflected on the stone of insight. How could it be completely blank? There are only two possibilities for the stone of insight to not display a result. Firstly, one doesn't possess the state of insight. Secondly, one's soul depth has surpassed the range which the stone of insight could bear. Thus it isn't that there isn't a result, but that it is unable to show it. Pavilion Master Zhang explained slowly. Surpassed the range which the stone of insight could bear. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.